content warnings are always necessary.
Probably.
And in sport this morning, England going to the fourth day of the second test against Pakistan, needing something very special to win, or lots of runs. The America's Cup is back this afternoon, and Chelsea say they're London's true club.
A calm and misty start to Friday for many of us before it turns increasingly wet and windy from the west. A number of low-pressure systems to watch out for during the next few days. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
It's just gone 6 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
If you're feeling very content this morning...
I am feeling very content and content.
Oh, good.
I'd consent to that content.
But
Yeah, excellent.
I'll tell you who's not feeling content this morning.
Oh, who's that?
It's young Apple Martin.
Who?
Daughter of Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin,
Oh,
the frontman
Apple.
of Coldplay. Remember Apple? Remember when she was born?
Apple. Yeah,
Apple?
yeah.
Good girl.
This is. We were talking about Chris Martin and Gwyneth, who uncoupled, correct?
They-
as well?
yes.
They uncoupled.
They
Yes.
uncoupled and named their child Apple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what was it? Consciously uncoupled or
They
something?
did,
It was
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, yeah. Anyway, spare a thought for Apple Martin this morning. She's not very happy with her mother. Because her mother has been
Is it
filming...
those candles?
Well, that could be one thing, but it's actually
Smells terrible.
Yes.
the Goop candles. No, this is to do with her acting career.
Oh.
Her mother has been filming scenes with Timothy Chalamet, who
Has Apple got the hots for him?
Apple has got the hots
he?
for. We'll put
Who,
it that
Timothy?
way.
Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet.
Right.
He's an
okay.
actor.
He's the man of the moment in Hollywood, let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Apple's got a crush on Timothy Chalamet, and Gwyneth has been snogging him. And apparently she's very upset that her mum has got her claws on her
But
mouth.
that's only... It's only the films, though, isn't it?
It's only the films, but
Oh!
I don't know.
Say no more.
Would you
She's
be
not
happy
happy.
if Mrs. Coit was filming a movie and
With Timothy Chalamet...
snogging Timothy
I'll be happy.
Chalamet?
No, it's more if my mother... If it was the Apple situation,
more worried
I'd be
about
if
your
my
mother.
mother... Mum, what are you doing with Timothy Chalamet?
Yeah.
Shamalalama.
Well, a source says, she said, Mum, I can't believe that you've kissed my crush. But Apple has been on set lots. She wants to be near Timothy Chalamet, despite the fact she's been snogging her mother. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Acting's weird.
It
like
is.
That.
Acting is weird.
It is a strange thing.
I wouldn't allow it.
Would you not?
No, I would
It's
not
a good
allow
job
it.
your husband isn't into acting then.
Yes.
I've had lots of conversations with actors about those sorts of scenes.
Oh, yeah.
probably, And said, are they uncomfortable? Are they often? Most will always say it's, especially certain scenes. There's people that it's all choreographed, very uncomfortable. But one actually said, I really enjoy it. But I can't say who it was or who he was with at the time. But
Wow.
They have intimacy advisors, don't they?
Oh, they've got all the intimacy coaches and things now.
Is that a job?
Yeah, it's a job to make sure everybody feels comfortable on set.
Wow.
Their boundaries are respected and all of that.
The wrong career path.
Imagine that would be a job. Crazy.
I think it's something I'd do very well at.
Well, you have got 2 children.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Right.
let us know what you think on any of the above. tvnews.com/you'll say.
Right, the Conservative leadership candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out last night at a special GB News event.
Yes, both candidates clashed on a wide range of issues, including Britain's membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, illegal migration and culture wars.
Well, our political editor, Christopher Hope, reflects on the candidates' performances.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is, Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
So there's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does she stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end. Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
Okay, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy, so I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it's a tie, actually.
But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
But at the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
Well, let's talk to former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrop. Good to see you this morning.
Morning.
I'm just fascinated by that last gentleman's comment. It's not going to appeal to the electorate, neither of them. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an absolutely fair enough take. You have to slightly take almost the hustings period and the membership selection process with a bit of a pinch of salt. The party is literally talking to itself, and that's kind of OK for this moment in time. It's which candidate, and this is quite a good criteria to think about it in my head sometimes, is which candidate do you feel has got the most to grow? And sometimes they can be quite ill-defined. I mean, a lot of people, if you ask most people down the pub who Keir Starmer was in 2019, 2018, they wouldn't be able to tell you. But almost that blank canvas gave them a bit of room to grow. I was actually I have to say, they have such distinctively different styles. You know, with Rob, I think you get a really clear policy agenda. He's obviously gone away over the last year or so, and he's looked at the books, and he's really, really thought about policy clearly. And then with Kemi, you get kind of a quite an unusually kind of ferocious and quite exciting, charismatic personality. And so I think for the membership, I think there's a real choice there.
Who came out on top for you last night?
It's a really, really tough one, because I think when Kemi's the best 10% of Kemi is very hard to match. I mean, amongst kind of any politician in the country right now, I would say. But there's a real calm consistency to Rob that is genuinely thought out, real good policy. And I think he's identified the policy that the party need to get right before the country will bother listening to one iota, and that is immigration. and he's not quite as flashy, he's not quite as exciting, but that kind of steadiness, maybe in the long run, is something that members might look to.
Yeah, but all the polls say Badenoch off the back of that, and I wonder if that, I mean, if the membership like her, is that ever going to be enough? It's an echo chamber.
Look, the Tory party have torn itself up over the last few years. It's a snake that shed its skin countless times. It's absolutely of integral importance that whoever wins, and if that is Kemi, if it's Rob, that they understand, and it's a two-way thing here, but that the party and the new leader and the new MPs and the old MPs and the voters all come together and slightly kind of heal a bit, because the party has been in a shocking way the last few years, and admittedly I was privy to some of that, and I get it. You know, voters are sick and tired of the Tories.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you mentioned that, because did you notice last night Robert Jenrick refused to point out Kemi Badenoch's weakness, and then when Kemi Badenoch was asked about Mr Jenrick's weakness, she made it something about the ECHR. No personal attacks, no blue-on-blue attacks. Do you think that is something that they are both consciously trying to avoid because of the state of the party right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's the Tory party is not in a muscular place that can withstand a lot of kind of inward-looking and a kind of attack dog fighting. It's interesting though, because when you get there's a really good reflection, and Christopher Hope, I thought, did an amazing job last night in giving them space and time and bringing in the audience well. But it's very interesting where Rob refused to say anything negative, and Kemi just left a bit. Not wrong to say quite studs up, but left a bit on him. And I think for the membership, there's quite an interesting choice there in terms of that was quite that was a good kind of that was reflective of their styles in a way.
Yeah. Just briefly, whoever wins this, will they still be leader at the time of the next general election?
You would have to. You'd really want to hope so as a Conservative voter, or even a previous Conservative voter of stability. You have no idea. I think...
Go on, be honest with us, Oscar. I know you're teetering on the edge.
Well, look, I mean, not in the spin game here, but I think the Labour Party and Keir Starmer's position, you could just as easily say in a couple of years.
Yeah, but it's not them I'm asking about.
I think Rob engenders a slight calmness where that would be less likely, potentially.
OK. Oscar Redruff?
Very much a politician, Oscar.
No, I'm not. Absolutely not.
I don't know. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you later on.
Thank you. Now, today marks the first time that a reigning British monarch has visited Australia for 13 years.
It's going to be the King's first time in the country since he ascended to the throne. He'll be welcomed by the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
Well, let's cross over all of the way to Australia now, where our GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us live now from Sydney. Good to see you, Cameron, down under. Hope the flight was good for you. It's a very long flight, isn't it? And a significant trip coming up for the King and Queen.
It's an incredibly long flight, and the King is actually en route as we speak. He was spotted arriving at Heathrow Airport for a commercial flight, actually. It's understood he perhaps is going as far as Singapore before joining up with the Queen, who's been on a private break, and then they'll make their way together to Sydney. But when they do touch down in Sydney later on today, it's actually going to be, here's a bit of trivia for you, the first time ever a reigning king has stepped foot on Australian soil, because it was the late Queen who visited as the first reigning monarch way back in 1954. A year after her coronation, and funnily enough, it's a year after King Charles's coronation, and he's visiting today. But of course, there was a huge question mark whether or not this visit could take place at all because of his cancer diagnosis. It's a 6-day trip, so relatively short, and there has been perhaps some concessions made. For example, New Zealand was originally on the cards for the King and Queen to visit. That no longer happening. He's only visiting New South Wales, which is Sydney and Canberra, so he's not going to be visiting like his late mother did every state and every capital city around the country apart from Darwin back in 1954. But of course we have to remember that the King is 75 years old. When the late Queen first visited Sydney as monarch, she was 27 years old. But there are going to be some disappointed racegoers as well, because the King is having a rest day tomorrow, partly because of his cancer diagnosis and perhaps because it's an incredibly long flight as well. So there's King Charles III Stakes happening at the Randwick Racecourse, and there was some speculation as to whether the King and Queen would attend tomorrow. I understand that is not happening, but certain engagements have been added. For example, the King is meeting 2 cancer experts here in the country. Australians of the Year, they have been dubbed, and they have done a lot of work tackling melanoma, a form of skin cancer, which is one of the most common forms of cancer in Australia. But what do the people here think about the King and Queen's upcoming visit? Well, it depends who you ask. If you ask Republicans, funnily enough, they are dubbing it the Farewell Tour of Oz. Graham Smith, campaigner, he has flown all the way out here to Sydney, and he's planning to protest in Australia. He's planning to protest in Sydney and indeed Canberra with those big yellow signs. But perhaps more significantly is 6 state premiers, 6 leaders, political leaders, have all snubbed an official reception with King Charles and Queen Camilla in Canberra on Monday. There's been various excuses from cabinet meetings to trade envoy visits, but monarchists are pointing out that this trip has been in the diary for months and they couldn't spare half a day to come for a reception. But Republicans saying that clearly it would be a huge cost to the taxpayer for these premiers to fly to the capital city of Australia to attend just a single reception. So make of that what you will. Monarchists calling it a bit of a slap in the face. But I spoke to a couple of Australian people earlier on today, and here is what they said.
So excited about it.
Are you?
Yes. We actually saw him when we were in, where was that? Oh, in Windsor. In Windsor. Not really interested.
You're not really interested in the King coming?
No. I believe Australia should become a republic.
Australians are going to welcome Charles and Camilla down under?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Yeah, we're friendly people.
Sort of happy to see them. I'm glad they're coming out. It's good that they're showing some support for the country. It's kind of cool. Something to read about in the news, I guess.
I think everybody's just doing their thing and we should let them. I think it's all good. We welcome pretty much everybody here.
Well, speaking of welcoming King Charles and Queen Camilla, the Australian Monarchist League say they wrote a letter to King Charles ahead of the visit where several thousand signatures were on it welcoming the monarch to the country. And they say the point of their organisation is to defend the Constitution and the Crown in Australia because it best protects the freedoms and democracy of the Australian people. Well, following King Charles and Queen Camilla landing in Australia, the Sydney Opera House, that world-famous landmark, is going to be lit up with projections of images of King Charles's 15 previous visits to the country, official previous visits to the country. Keep tuning into GB News because we will be bringing you the King and Queen's arrival live.
Lovely stuff. Cameron, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, jealous.
Very nice, isn't it? Right, see you later on. I mean, I find that very odd, you know. I'm of an age where I still find travel really bizarre.
In what sense? I find it fascinating that he's in a whole
the
other side of the world right now.
On the side the other
and
day.
speaking to us down the line, I think that's incredible.
Yeah, that's very odd. I still can't get away from that. You can be in Spain in a couple of hours.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Really bizarre, isn't it? How the world has changed.
Well, the King is on the way on a commercial flight. I think that's very interesting as well.
Yes, but what does that mean?
He'll be flying BA or something.
Well, yes, but he won't be sort of... I mean, he must have
He won't be sat in economy,
all of first class to himself.
Well, you'd think. I want to know the detail. That's the kind of detail I want to know.
Because he can't be sat next to Marjorie from
Doncaster
or whatever. No, I mean, it's just not a thing, is it?
No. I reckon he's probably got the whole of first class, you'd imagine, and then he's being picked up by the Australians in Singapore.
He wants to be environmentally friendly and all that, but I mean, look at the president.
Air Force
One. We should have something similar over here. We really, really should.
And no one questions it, do they, about the president? But you would. It happens here, it does, doesn't it? It's like, is the Prime Minister in a helicopter?
I think we should buy him a plane.
Yes, I think.
Let's club together and buy him a plane.
Yeah, well, let us know what you think about that visit, gbnews.com/you'll say. The Australians sound very friendly, I think.
Yeah, well, even the ones who are a bit Republican are.
Also not that fussed, yeah.
No.
Not nasty about it, which is nice.
Yeah.
Refreshing.
I think it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Right, 21 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other main stories this morning.
And authorities are continuing to investigate the death of singer Liam Payne following his sudden death falling from a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires. As details emerge, tributes have flooded in, with the former members of One Direction releasing a joint statement to express their devastation. Simon Cowell, who started the band back in 2011, has announced he will not continue filming Britain's Got Talent auditions following the tragic news.
The National Gallery in London is enforcing new security measures, including a ban on liquids and no large bags following attacks on artworks in the gallery. In a statement, they said, unfortunately, we've now reached a point where we've been forced to act to protect our visitors, staff and collection.
The wife of a Tory councillor has been jailed for 2.5 years after stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, who's married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a violent message on X calling for mass deportation and arson against hotels housing immigrants. The post was deleted after 2 hours and she later apologised.
Right, it was a little bit warmer yesterday. Will it continue today? Here's Aidan.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea. And that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland, with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself. A damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Do stay with us. Still to come, find out how Israel targeted and killed the Hamas leader in a significant development to the conflict. That's next.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 6:28 now. There's renewed hope in the Middle East following the death of the Hamas leader and October the 7th mastermind, Yahya Sinwar, who was on Israel's most wanted list.
Well, he was killed during a strike in the Gazan city of Rafah on Wednesday.
Well, the West is now piling on pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister to end the conflict in the region as a result.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is Defence Editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Good to see you this morning, Robert Fox. And this is seismic news, isn't it? Not just for Israel, not just for Hamas, but for the whole of the Middle East.
Well, he's the big leader that they wanted to get because he was the architect of the October the 7th attack and massacres. The Israelis have now killed the three commanders responsible for planning and executing that attack, Mohammed Deif back in July and another one called Marwan Issa. It's good news up to that point, as the candidate Vice President Kamala Harris said in the United States. This really opens up the the possibility of a negotiated peace with the return of the hostages. Now, those are two pretty big conditions, because less enthusiastic has been the Prime Minister of Israel himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, who more or less late last night was saying the fight goes on unless there is total surrender across the piece. And that's the problem. They don't know how many fighters are left. There are quite a few, and they're giving the Israelis a bit of trouble.
I mean, there is a lot of internal pressure, though, isn't there, on Netanyahu, in terms of people saying, well, now is the time to focus on the hostages.
Oh, yes, of course. And he is being supported by the right-wingers from the settler parties in his coalition, and there will be pressure from outside. Israel has now on its agenda, it must move forward to get those hostages that remain alive out. And that is a priority. And allies on all sides are telling Netanyahu that, including an increasingly tough-speaking President Biden. And I think that will go forward. They've got to find, though, a leadership now of Hamas that really can deliver. They've cut the heads off the military command, but who can they negotiate with? probably through the political leadership which still exists in Qatar, that can get those hostages delivered. That is the problem, is who is really in charge of Hamas in Gaza now? That's the first problem. And the problem is also for Israel now is going to be Gaza itself, with 90% of its population displaced, over 40,000 killed, and an enormous amount of refugees. And they've got a similar problem in the north in the fight with Hezbollah.
Robert, every leader of Hamas since the 1990s has been killed by Israel, haven't they? But there's always been a successor. So will Sinwar have a successor, or like you say, have most of them now been taken out?
Well, one of them being mentioned is his younger brother, curiously, and there are other leaders. And as you rightly say, the problem with Hamas is that it looks unified, it formed a government, but it is all politics. In the West Bank as well as in Gaza is clan-based. They're very, very split up. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, what replaces Hamas now, because that is the advantage that Israel gets from this. That Netanyahu, after October the 7th last year, said he wanted to destroy Hamas. Well, as a military force, and as a political force, he's all but done that. Now he's got to move. This is what the allies, particularly US and I'm sure UK and France, will be saying. You've got to move to a peace stabilization plan. Colin Powell, the American general who became Secretary of State, famously said that once you have broken a thing, with an invasion, say, he was speaking in Iraq, you own it. And the problem for Israel is now what it does with its ownership of Gaza.
OK, Robert, it's obviously something we're going to talk about a lot more in the very near future. But for now, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, at 6:32, are you a saver? Yes, he is. He's very good at saving.
Yeah.
And I'm a spender. But if you're not a saver, don't worry, because it turns out
Well, do worry.
Well, maybe you do need to worry a little bit.
Yes.
As it turns out, you're not alone. 1/3 of us have less than £1,000 stored away for a rainy day.
Which doesn't go very far these days. Is there a solution to this? Let's ask savings expert Kevin Mountford. I've got to say, Kevin, I'm really shocked at this because £1,000 does not last very long in 2024. And if 1/3 of adults have got that or less put away, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, Raisin's the largest global savings platform, and we carry out these research projects from time to time. And on this occasion, we went out to thousands of UK adults, and we came up with the Great British Savings Report. And as you say, for me, there was a couple of key highlights, and one is that a large number of Brits, something around about 21, 22 million, have got less than £1,000 in their savings. So there's nothing to fall back on. The other point is that there's a real concern. Around 30 million adults feel that when they reach retirement, they won't be able to live comfortably. So they're really worrying things there. I think as far as people having very little in savings, then clearly we've had the cost of living crisis. So for a lot of households, it's been a struggle meeting kind of everyday needs. But what we also saw during lockdown, for instance, we saved more than we'd ever done because we couldn't have this discretionary spend. And people did manage to build up a buffer. And thankfully they did, because clearly that would have been put to good use in recent times. So what we're trying to see is that as inflation comes down and the likelihood is that interest rates will drop again, that some of that pressure on households will ease as we go into next year. And we need to get back into good savings habits again.
One thing that struck me in this report was that people are putting money into their savings account, but then they're having to dip into them. And it's young people especially who are dipping in 6 times a month, which you can imagine doesn't leave you very much left. So what does that say to you? Is it people not earning enough in the first place, or do you think this is a case of people living above their means?
I think there's a combination of things. I think we're all guilty of living above our means. I mean, very often when you speak to people, they'll go, well, I'll save what I've got left at the end of the month. And guess what? There's very little, if anything, left at the end of the month. So we've got to get into the good habits and try and put some money away at the start of the month. I mean, you know, open up something like a regular saver, £20, £25 a month. And because of the terms of that account, then you can't really dip into it. But I think as far as people dipping into the savings, then it's understandable to an extent, and younger people do it more than older people, which I guess at the older age you're a bit more affluent, you've got a bit more cash. But I think there's a very different situation when you're looking at putting some money away just for everyday needs, and you can use your current account or maybe a savings account that's linked to your current account, but try and have something that you're setting money aside for longer term. The other thing I would say that came out of the report, that people who do have money, there's still something like 240 billion sitting in accounts paying 1% or less. So even people who manage to save are not putting that money to the best use. And really that should be extra money in their pockets as opposed to the banks.
Absolutely. Kevin, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And a nice little bit of advice, even if you're really strapped for cash, anything you can put away. I mean, Kevin was saying 25 quid a month, £5 a month, all adds up.
Pennies make the pounds.
They do, yeah.
And all that. Speaking about money, time is ticking on for your chance to win £36,000 in cash in the Great British Giveaway. Just, well, less than 2 weeks now, isn't it?
It's 1 week today.
Oh, well, there you go.
1 week today.
Yeah, so make sure you don't miss out. Here are all of the details that you need.
On demand. Good luck.
Still to come, have you seen the new Chelsea emblem to mark the club's 120th anniversary?
No.
No, me neither, but we'll have a look in a minute with Paul Coyd.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Ayrshire, the A71 remains closed in both directions between Newmilns and Darvel after an accident yesterday. There are delays and cancellations to trains between Liverpool Lime Street and Manchester Victoria because of a signalling problem. In Powys, the A490 is closed each way off the A483 at Coed because of flooding. In Herefordshire, the A438 is closed because of flooding between Willersley and Letton. In Northamptonshire, Geddington Road in Corby is closed off the A43 Stamford Road after a fire on an industrial estate. In London, the A210 Eltham Road in Eltham's closed off the South Circular after an accident. And on the M27 in Hampshire, the eastbound exit Slit Road at Junction 7 at Hedge End near Southampton is closed. That's for emergency repairs. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
There's a huge financial and mental strain for parents, but we have this system now where it talks about they bringing a family member to help, but I don't think that's happening a lot of the time. I think people are having to be off work, look after their child, and often, sorry to say, but their school always calls the mum, and then you have this situation where you have nobody to look after your child. People's grandparents don't seem to want to do it so much, and often family members aren't just down the road. So what we have is no village. And I think it's really important when you have a child that you need that village.
Are children getting more sicker than they used to be? Or is it just that we take the odd sniffle a bit more seriously now since 2020?
Yes, I do think the odd sniffle can be. I know in my school they say 3 days away, you know, the slightest little thing, and it's like...
If you have a cold?
Yeah, no, please, go in, yeah. And
3 days off if you have a cold for a child, and we wonder why all these parents aren't at work. I think some of these figures about people who could be working and aren't working, they're not necessarily on benefits, but some of them will be people who, during the pandemic, particularly parents, decided to get a different work-life balance. They quite liked being at home, and they realised the children are benefiting from it. Do you think those people are in these statistics, Annette?
Of people staying at home with not working?
Who decided to not go back to work of working age?
Yes, I think a lot of people don't want to go into an office anymore either. They've had that little bit of freedom and they're like, I'm not going in. And I know employers are trying to get them to go in, but they just want to be at home. They want to be near their children if their children are sick, whether that's the mum or the dad. And also a lot of people don't live near their office or wherever. They don't want to commute. Train fares have gone up, so they say, well, why should I pay? So you have this whole knock-on effect throughout the economy.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's sports time.
Oh no! Look, wickets are falling as we speak. I can't keep up with this, with what's going on in Pakistan at the moment.
Are we having a good time or a bad time? Because we couldn't keep up yesterday. Yeah.
What do you think, Mr.
I think we're having a bad time.
We are having a bad time.
Oh, thank heavens for that.
Usually it's the opposite of what you say.
I know.
That's a shame.
We are having a bad time. It's now 78 for 5. England are chasing 297 against Pakistan. Fall of wickets, they're just falling like flies. 3 have gone now already this morning. It all started around 6 o'clock this morning in Pakistan, so this is not a test match England are going to win. And if they do, it will just be the most unbelievable thing. Let me ask you this.
Oh, yes.
Do you know...
probably.
Do you know why it's called... I mean, Ben Duckett was out for a duck.
Yes.
Oh, a duck. Anyway, but he was out for a duck yesterday, which obviously means you don't get any runs. You're out for 0, out for 0. Why do you think it's called a duck?
Because it quacks.
Someone else said that, actually, as well. No, it's not that.
Oh.
Because you have to dunk?
No. Good. Like the way you're thinking.
Yeah.
Way off, but it's good thinking.
You're wrong, but...
Yeah, but nice.
OK.
It's because a duck egg...
is blue.
It's yummy.
No. it's the shape. It's like a 0. Isn't that ridiculous?
Give over.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Well, so it's a hen's egg.
It's not me. Yeah, I know.
Out for a chicken.
Well, it's more
out
oval.
for a chicken. That probably works better, out for a chicken. But apparently it's out for a duck is because of the shape of the egg. That's what I heard.
There you go. Right, now what did Sir Ben Ainsley pull off?
Well, Ineos Britannia, day before yesterday, very good, because it looked like in the America's Cup we were 2 down, quite frankly, against New Zealand, and Ben Ainsley pulled off 2 wins in 2 races. So actually, I say we're 2 down. We're 2 down now. It's 4-2 currently, and then it continues in Barcelona a little bit later. Do you know it's Britain's first America's Cup point since 1934? And we've never won. It's still. I know I keep going on about the fact they haven't won it in 173 years, but it still seems amazing to me. You think there'd be 1 win since Victorian days, but there hasn't been. So it continues this afternoon in Barcelona, 2 more races. So should Britannia win those 2, that levels it up against New Zealand, and then it's the 1st to 7. I'm getting more and more into sailing since this has happened.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I think I may be a captain in the future.
I think you may be.
Or a helmsman.
I really wanted to win this.
I'd like to be a helmsman, but I don't even know what that means. But I think I would be a good helmsman.
They do the steering.
Do they?
Yeah.
What about the people that pull the ropes? What are those?
Left hand down a bit.
Yeah, all that stuff. Hoist the mainsail. How about that? Oh, that's what a captain
Yeah,
would
no, very
anyway,
good.
Alec Wilkinson, our friend Alec,
Yep.
he's in Barcelona. He's going to join us just after 8:30 to let us know what's going on. But I'm
Good
pretty
stuff.
excited about it this afternoon.
I'm intrigued by Chelsea's new logo. We haven't seen it.
OK, well, let me tell you about it first. The Lion logo, it's a very nice classic logo that Chelsea have. They're celebrating their 120th birthday, and so and a lot of clubs do this. They redesign their logo for present day, just to make it a little more
modern.
Yeah.
But anyway, the designers have described it. It intends to symbolise their status as London's true club.
Oh. How do you feel about that?
I think you can guess. Have a look at this. This is it.
Oh, for goodness sake. It looks like a banking emblem.
It does look like a banking, and it says London on it.
But the thing is,
No, I don't love that.
the lion has not changed, but LDN, I mean, I worked for a radio station. It was, well, I'll tell you what it was. It was 20 years ago when GLR became BBC London, and they named it LDN to make it sound, LDN.
It doesn't look cool.
LDN. And people go, what's LDN? So they're doing it the same. Is it supposed to make... Why do you need to abbreviate London?
And also, why London? It's called Chelsea.
It's Chelsea Football Club.
I don't love the font.
I don't.
Don't love it.
Don't like the line, don't like the font.
Don't like the LDN.
No.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true.
so
But anyway,
true.
there it is. So I can't really see what the difference is. Probably cost them a fortune just because they put LDN at the bottom. That's it.
Yeah,
That's
there you go. Paul, thank you.
I need a job like that where you just put LDN on an emblem and get paid millions.
Yeah, there you go.
Be nice.
Right, we need to head to a break very rapidly because we've got the papers coming your way in just a moment.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Serving some of the most talked about food in Chelsea, Executive Head Chef of Number 50 Cheney, Ian Smith, has created a range of menus with a hint of the homeland, using the finest British ingredients sourced by trusted suppliers. Ian Smith was head chef at Jason Atherton's Social Eating House and spent time in the kitchens of the Galvin brothers. Ian joins me now to tell more of the story. Tell me about number 50 Cheney.
Yes, so we are a beautiful restaurant down in the corner of Chelsea on the Embankment with an amazing team. And we are really pride ourselves on, being an affordable luxury that people, really are wanting to return to week in, week out.
What's the view from your restaurant?
Well, you can see the Embankment, the Thames, and Albert Bridge, which is very nice.
Very
it's actually
nice.
lit up. Very romantic.
And tell me a little bit about your philosophy. I was talking there about having a touch of the homeland, British food, seasonal food.
Yes. Yeah, I think for me, great cooking is, with simplicity on finest ingredients, cooked with simplicity, and ultimately, there to be enjoyed through... Yeah, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, it starts as a young person's business. You went into it very young, didn't you? 15?
Yes. Yeah, so I was 15. I sat in my parents' bedroom, called the Ritz, the Dorchester and Claridge's, and very luckily, a man on the end of the phone, 21 years ago, sent me on to a college course called the Specialised Chef Scholarship. 3 days later, I had a Ritz stamp letter through the post, and off me and my parents went, and luckily I got on the course.
And how old were you when you got your first responsibility, would you say?
I think the biggest responsibility in my career is today. Leading number 50 Cheney.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
6:49, time for the papers with Claire Pearsall and Nigel Nelson. Good morning, you two. Here's some cheery news, Claire, that we're expecting in the budget, according to the Mail. Fuel duty is going to go up by 7p a litre. That's going to help growth in the country.
Is anyone remotely surprised at any of this? I mean, because I think what you've seen is Labour have been setting it up, saying there's this enormous black hole. Now, whether you believe the total amount of it and whether it is indeed a black hole is yet to be seen. But they have to find some money from somewhere, and it looks like the motorist is going to be hit. So for 14 years, we've had a sort of freeze, and everybody's agreed that we'll just leave the price, won't add any more onto the duty on fuel. It's already expensive enough. But come nearly Halloween, we think that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is going to increase it by up to 7 pence, which will add at least £3 or more onto filling up a family car.
Which is fine. Family car, right? I mean, it's a pain, it's a nuisance, it's maybe a bit problematic. What I think is the big lorries, where actually it's going to cost them hundreds of pounds more.
Yeah, I mean, the money. I think Claire just said the right thing. The money's got to come from somewhere. We know it's going to be a really painful budget. We know there are going to be tax rises, and the question is where they fall. So whoever gets taxed more will start squealing about it.
But we're meant to be generating economic growth.
We are, but we still have to raise some money. So if you actually sort of break this one down, there's been a 5p freeze on fuel duty for the last, I think about it's dozen years or something. 14 years.
Oh, since there was last a Labour government.
Shame, yeah. Surprising, isn't it? 14 years is what the Conservative government does. It looks after the motorists and Labour comes in and penalises.
But you couldn't freeze it forever. So what will happen is you get rid of the freeze, you add 1 or 2p in extra tax, and then you'd automatically get a 1p rise in VAT. So that's where kind of your 7p on a litre comes from. But if you don't tax that what else do you tax elsewhere? I mean,
you think it's fair then just to go after the motorists when we're being clobbered with
what about the
highest...
pensioners? The pensioners, the
I was going to say,
the business people who've got second homes. Oh, no, not second homes; they're going to be exempt. But capital gains tax going up. There's a whole host of areas that everyone's going to be fed up with at the end of it.
But I
because
thought
they're going
that
to pay
Labour
more.
was supposed to be for the working people. What
And
about
avoiding
those
taxes on
people
working
who are
people?
tradesmen or women and they go around in a small van? They have to take that. They've got no choice. If you're a plumber or an electrician or a builder, you can't carry all of that stuff on a train or a tube. They're going to be hit with extra fuel.
But at least you know that income tax is not going to go up, nor is national insurance for workers, and no VAT.
All right. Well, meanwhile, Nigel, pensioners in the eye. Not only losing their winter fuel allowance, but then being scammed by something else.
Yeah, this is really disgraceful that inevitably you've got criminals who've moved in on this one, as they often do. So what they're doing is they're getting in touch with pensioners. They're saying, oh, well, because you're losing your winter allowance, we can actually send you a living subsidy, as they call it. What you do is you sign on, you give all your bank details, and they nick your money.
Yeah.
As always with these things, it's desperation, isn't it? It's desperate people. It's playing on emotions.
It is,
people that are worried about their winter fuel allowance, and
it gives
preying on them.
It gives that vacuum to those kind of scam artists that will see an opportunity and go to exploit it. And there will be some older and vulnerable people who won't realise that this is not a legitimate way of making up their income. They just will fall for it, and it's really incredibly sad. And they won't be able to get any money back that's taken off of them, because undoubtedly these people then just disappear into the ether. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, it's shameful, isn't it? Tell you something else that's shameful, Claire. Sewage dumping in Windermere. Apparently it's gone back years, according to the Eye.
I found this quite stunning. You think of the sewage being put into rivers and seas as a relatively recent thing, but when you look at the article, it's been going on for at least 3 years, possibly even longer, into one of the most beautiful spots in the Lake District. It's an absolutely stunning place. Great for people getting out there on boats and water skis, if you can brave the cold.
Swimming. Yeah, people are swimming in that.
People do swim in it, and it's an absolutely stunning place to do so. And United Utilities have seemingly been dumping this in for some time.
100 million litres of raw sewage over 3 years.
Take away the bonuses of the bosses for that.
Well, yeah,
I think
absolutely.
lots of people would agree with you now.
Lock them up, is what I say.
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right. It's disgraceful. Thankfully, I don't think I've swum in Windermere in the last 3 years.
About to say, you wouldn't want to, would you, knowing that?
Right, thanks both. We'll see you later on.
Let's have a look at the weather now with Aidan.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea. And that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland, with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in. and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself. A damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Buses replaced trains between Houghton and Chester because of flooding. There are a number of road closures too because of flooding. Powys, the A490, is closed each way off the A483. But Coed Dinas in Worcestershire, the A4103 is closed each way between Bransford and Rushwick. And in Herefordshire, the A438 is closed each way between Willersley and Letton. In Northamptonshire, Geddington Road in Corby is closed because of a fire on the industrial estate, causing queues back along Oakley Road towards there. In London, the A210 Eltham Road is closed each way between South Circular and the A20 Sidcup Road because of an accident. And on the M27 in Hampshire, the eastbound exit at Junction 7 for the A334 at Hedge End near Southampton is closed for emergency repairs. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only...
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good morning. The Tory leadership hopefuls clash in a GB News special.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick can't find common ground on the controversial topic of leaving the European Convention of Human Rights.
Well, Mr Jenrick called the treaty's ruling shameful before Mrs Badenoch bit back.
There's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
I think that the ECHR argument is not the right one. I think that is the biggest weakness. I think it will divide our party. It will mean that the infighting and squabbling will continue. If we want to end the drama, we need to do this the right way. Let's come to a consensus.
Well, Robert Jenrick will join us later this morning for his reaction to this and more.
I don't just go on media just for the sake of going on media. I go on media when I have something to say.
Australia prepares to greet the King and Queen as they arrive later this morning for that much-anticipated tour.
A day on from the death of Liam Payne, One Direction release a heartfelt statement and Simon Cowell takes a step back from the limelight.
World leaders hope an end to the fighting finally in sight as Israel confirms it's killed the architect of the October 7th attacks. So, is the Middle East starting to come back from the brink?
That's as Foreign Secretary David Lammy lands in China to talk strategy. But is Sir Keir Starmer's reset of world relations all it's cracked up to be?
ITV's ridiculed after an episode of Midsummer Murders has a trigger warning because there's some witchcraft involved. We're going to debate whether content warnings are really necessary.
And in the sports, going to take a cricketing miracle for England to win the second test against Pakistan. They currently need 202 runs with only 4 wickets remaining. Talking of sailing close to the wind. What do you think?
Not bad.
Okay. Okay. After winning their first America's Cup race in 90 years, could Britain win the trophy for the first time ever? And could you drink beer watching live football in the future?
A calm and misty start to Friday for many of us before it turns increasingly wet and windy from the west. A number of low-pressure systems to watch out for during the next few days. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
It's coming up to bonfire night.
It certainly is. I'm excited. I'm going to a fireworks display this year.
Good.
You?
Good. I like them in the garden.
It's changed for me.
Them in the garden.
Oh, I wouldn't risk it in the garden.
Why?
Dogs.
Oh, right. So
Shaky Nelly.
Shaky Nelly.
Yeah.
She doesn't like the
Nelly
fireworks.
was fine, but I loved firework night, but now changed my mind.
Oh, well, this is interesting.
This is interesting then, because
Yeah.
a Labour MP is introducing a private member's bill into the House of Commons to ban loud fireworks. Anything louder than a hairdryer, which is basically all of them, need to be banned in order to prevent stress to cats and dogs.
So what do you think, Paul? Would you agree with that?
I do agree. There is a way. Now, this I know for a fact that you can have fireworks without bangs and crashes.
Yes,
yeah, but you're very limited.
But that's part of the fun.
But
it's
it's
the bangs.
It's not the...
No, I think that is part of it.
Yeah, you think so?
I mean, what are you limited to? A Catherine wheel and a sparkler.
I like
I'd say. I love a Catherine
That's
wheel.
okay. That's not going to scare... But the bangs... The thing is, it wouldn't be quite so bad if it just happened on November the 5th. But now it goes across the weekend, it goes before and afterwards. It runs for like a week and it's...
And then if you're in...
terrified.
And then some cities, it would be Diwali, wouldn't it? It would be Chinese New Year. I mean, it's not just limited to...
Well, I do think we should limit it to, like, the 5th of November and perhaps another date or whatever. But I have to say, and as an animal lover, and as someone who's always had animals, I still wouldn't get rid of fireworks.
No, I don't want to say, oh, yeah, we've got to stop it for everybody.
Or even
one
introduce
night.
silent ones.
That's what I mean. If it was one night, it'd be OK. But it's just... When I've always liked fireworks, but it's only since I've had Nellie, and we only had her a couple of years old, rescue dog.
She gets nervous.
So scared.
Why can't you sit in with her and just put the telly on
trust
loud?
me. I'm like this, I'm tucked in, and then I've got easy listening music. Andy Williams is playing. Maybe that's what she's scared of. So that's playing. I've tried everything but one noise, and that you see the shaking. It's just...
The dog and the cat don't care.
I think it depends. It depends.
It's not bothered
if they've grown up with fireworks, so my family dog has grown up with fireworks, so totally fine with it.
Yeah,
so I think it depends.
So Dudley's fine. It does depend on that. But the thing is, if Rex was that scared and shaken, I think you would think differently. I really do. But I do love fireworks, and it's difficult. But when I see the state of Nellie, it's just scary.
Well, let us know what you think.
I have sympathy. I just don't think it should dictate what everybody else does.
Yeah.
OK.
Let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. Should we ban fireworks?
You're wrong.
To protect our pets?
How dare you?
Because I respect it, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to know what you think.
Yeah,
You come round and see now. I'm going to send you a video, and then you will think again. I know you will.
Because you've got a heart.
Yeah.
Heart of stone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Heart of stone. Right, Conservative leadership candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out last night at a special GB News event.
Yes, they clashed on a wide range of issues, including Britain's membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, illegal migration and culture wars.
Well, our political editor, Christopher Hope, reflects now on both of the candidates' performances.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is. Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
Oh, there's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain.
and I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does she stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end.
Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
OK, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy, so I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it was a tie, actually. But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
At the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
Well, joining us now live in the studio is former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Reddrop. Good to see you, Oscar.
Good morning.
What's your assessment of the GB News event last night? Who came out on top for you?
I think it completely depends on what you're looking for. I think if you want to be quite exhilarated, if you want charisma and, passion, then, Kemi's pretty unstoppable, on those terms. But if you want kind of real clear, thought-out, calm, steady, actually genuinely well-researched. He's obviously gone away, Rob, really thought about things clearly, policy proposals, then Rob's your guy. So actually, there was a lot of kind of outside noise about how, it tends to be from not within the party, and a lot of Labour criticism would be, the Tories have gone, there's just two choices, they're both from the right of the party, what are they doing? But actually what last night, I think, proved was that you actually have very distinctive choices in terms of style and actual substance on policy as well.
I'm interested by that because Boris Johnson, who obviously was very popular, whether you know exactly where I'm going with this, don't you? Yeah, but he was policy light.
Boris, I think that's a slight misconception there. He's far heavier on charisma. I mean, he's kind of that Heineken politician. I used to go out with him on trips when he was Prime Minister. And this is right at the end, by the way, when a lot of people, really, in fairness, had enough with Boris. He would get mobbed in a positive way.
Yeah.
He would get absolutely mobbed. There were people hanging out their flat windows trying to get a picture of him.
If Kemi's got the charisma but not the policy, is that what the party needs?
Well, I think she's probably holding it quite close for now, strategically. And we've got little bits from her on stuff, but where I agree with Rob is that no one wants to listen to the Conservative Party at the moment. They've U-turned, they've kind of duped, they haven't delivered. And unless they show that they can deliver and they have the right solution on immigration, and that's what Rob said last night, which I agree with, then no one's going to believe a word they say. So I think Rob's really right to identify that.
Don't you think it's interesting, though, that immigration is not at the centre of this? It seems to be the central argument is the ECHR.
Yeah, I think that's Rob really, and I think, you know, quite successfully trying to kind of frame this leadership debate, you know, leave, remain, ECHR. Yeah. We've all heard that term before. I think for some people that's a bit of an eye roller, a bit of a kind of a turn-off, if you like. But Rob is so strong and clear on it. And people kind of go, oh, do we believe Rob? He's been on this kind of journey. He was a Remainer. But he was in the department and he took a very strong stance on it. And when he talks about the ECHR, and he's completely adamant that the only way we can solve legal immigration is to leave the ECHR. I believe him. I think he's seen under the bonnet. And
but does Kemi have a case when she says, actually, I'm not going to stake my claim on this. We need to find a consensus within the party? Because I mean, in some respects, that sounds very good in terms of party unity. I just wonder if it's a bit like the whole Europe question that dogged the Tories for decades, whether they ever can find a consensus.
Well, I mean, we clearly haven't yet. And I think there is something, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to sound like, I really like a lot of stuff about Kemi, but, we haven't found that consensus yet. Maybe there is something to be said for taking a really strong kind of leadership. This is my policy on the ECHR. I'm coming. Are you going to come with me? And I think there's something to be said for that from Rob's perspective.
Can either of them unite the party?
They're going to have to. They are going to have to.
I mean, it's a tough job, though.
It's a really tough job. It's a really tough job. I think that Boris's charisma, was a huge, kind of brought a huge sway, different collections of the party together. I think neither of them quite have that at this moment in time, but it's such early days, as we were talking about earlier. No normal person knew Keir Starmer was in 2018. So these guys have got a lot of room to grow, and we shouldn't judge them too harshly and too soon, in a way.
But surely that is the #1 priority. I mean, nothing is more important now for the existence of the Tory party going forward is to have cohesion and have some unity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if for people watching, who just, go about their 9 to 5, if your business or wherever you work, the office was just chaos and people arguing the whole time, it's not sustainable. And, that new leadership needs to come in and just calm all that down before we get, ideas of grandeur and,
Well, we shall see. And we're going to be talking to Robert Jenrick in the next hour. So see what he has to say the morning after the night before, as it were. Oscar,
yes.
Thank you very much indeed.
Guys.
Thank you very much. Now, it's been just over 24 hours since former One Direction star Liam Payne died at the age of just 31 after falling from a hotel balcony in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, tributes have been flooding in, of course, from his bandmates. Harry Styles, Louis Tomlinson, Zayn Malik, all sharing individual posts on social media as well after the former band members released that joint statement. Yeah. And we knew in a way there was going to be that joint statement, that they were going to have to talk to each other. And I think that's perfectly understandable, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. And he's all over the front pages today. His family's saying he's kind, funny and a brave soul, and they've asked for privacy as well at this. You can only imagine what they're going through.
Well, Simon Cowell as well, who of course created the band back in 2011, he's stepping back from Britain's Got Talent for the time being. There's all these auditions and things going on at the moment, you know how the show works, and he's pulling away from that for the time being.
Well, we're joined in the studio now by showbiz journalist Julianne Traynor. Good to see you this morning, Julianne. And such shocking news. I think we're all still reeling from it, aren't we? And tributes pouring in from his former bandmates now.
Yes, absolutely. It's so sad, and there's still such shock as well. But Simon Cowell has decided to step down from his judging role on Britain's Got Talent, and auditions were paused, but they will resume tomorrow in Blackpool. And standing in his place will be Bruno Tonelli, who was formerly a judge in Strictly Come Dancing. So Simon is yet to release a statement. But I imagine we might hear something later today now that Liam's family have spoken out and most of the other One Direction members.
What we are coming to terms with, though, is is a little bit more about what went on.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty grim picture, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's really shocking. But I think if you had seen some of maybe his social media content and Snapchat videos in the last few weeks, I think there was maybe signs there that everything wasn't as it should have been. And there was just, I don't know, some people have said there was a bit of a sadness in his eyes as well. So it's just so tragic. And obviously he's got a little son as well, to Cheryl Tweedy, and that's going to be heartbreaking for him. And I know Simon's son and Liam's son are also quite pally. They go to each other's birthday parties and stuff. So there's not only that professional connection between the two, but I guess that family tie as well.
The personal connection as well. And Julianne, we've also had pictures, haven't we, from Argentinian police in Buenos Aires about the state of the hotel room.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks really sad, but I don't know whether they should have been released, because I imagine it's really heartbreaking for his family to see that, and they're going through enough without all that having to be, I guess, splashed all over the news as well.
But what seems pretty clear is that, I mean, despite all the time he spent in rehab and all the rest of it, there was clearly a very big problem.
Yes. Well, he did admit before that he had done spells in rehab and that he had suffered as well with drink and drugs as well. So, yeah, he managed, though, to stay sober for 100 days. He announced that last year, I know, when he went to Wembley to a boxing match. So I think people maybe on the outside thought he'd come through the worst of it. But I guess when you've all that money and so many people saying yes to you and you don't maybe have a structure to your day, having to work, temptation can easily be, you know, entered into.
And we know as well that he was alone in that hotel room, wasn't he?
Exactly. He had been in Argentina with his girlfriend. He was there to see Niall Horan perform, and she actually, though, had left 2 days beforehand to go to Florida. So I guess maybe when he was on his own without his girlfriend, maybe, you know, thoughts got to him and, yeah, maybe he just couldn't cope.
That's such a sad story.
It is, yeah. I mean, obviously we don't know the exact circumstances surrounding his death so far, but an investigation is taking place, isn't it? A post-mortem is taking place in Argentina as we speak, and I'm sure, as you say, we're going to hear from Simon Cowell and Cheryl at some point as well.
Yes.
Who'll be reeling from all of this.
Absolutely.
OK, yes. Julianne Traynor, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
All right, 19 minutes past 7. Let's have a look at some of the other stories that we're covering this morning.
And Israel has confirmed the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has since said evil has suffered a heavy blow, but Israel's task is not complete. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says the UK will not mourn his death and called for a release of all hostages.
A Tory councillor's wife has been jailed for 2.5 years after stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport attacks. Lucy Connolly, married to Conservative councillor Raymond Connolly, posted a message on X calling for mass deportation and arson against hotels housing immigrants. The post was deleted after 2 hours and she later apologised.
The National Gallery in London is enforcing new security measures, including a ban on liquids and no large bags. It's following a series of attacks on artworks in the gallery, including Van Gogh's Sunflowers. In a statement, the gallery said, "Unfortunately, we have now reached a point where we have been forced to act to protect our visitors, our staff and the collection."
Well done, Just Stop Oil, making it more inconvenient for absolutely everybody else.
It's a bit of a slow response from the National Gallery, is it not? I mean, I thought you'd think that would be almost an instantaneous ban.
It's the third and fourth time it's happened, sort of thing, so...
I think it would have happened the first time, you'd say, yep, no liquids here. For obvious reasons.
Yeah, but anyway.
It's a shame, isn't it?
They've done it again. Right, let's see what the weather's going to do for you today. Here's Aidan.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west, always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea, and that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland, with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself, a damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, time is ticking on for your chance to win £36,000 worth of cash in the Great British Giveaway. Just 1 week left to get your entries in, so don't miss out. Here are all the details that you need.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next with £36,000 tax-free cash in your luck.
Still to come for you, you can find out why an episode of Midsummer Murders from 2004 is making headlines once again, and you won't believe it.
You've sunk in your chair.
I know.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is 7:28 now. I just need to warn you, if you're watching on TV or listening to us on the radio this morning, that this might upset you, cause you some concern. You might get unnecessary bouts of anger.
Maybe distressing.
Listening to this next debate.
Yes, because ITV bosses have come under scrutiny for putting a trigger warning on an episode of Midsummer Murders, not for the reason that you might think, but because it contains witchcraft.
Yes, the warning was added to an episode that first aired 20 years ago.
Yes.
Oh, there's good old John Nettles. Oh, he's brilliant.
Yeah, Barnaby, yeah.
Loved him in Bergerac. Anyway, some viewers called the move virtue signalling and excessive.
So we're asking this morning, are content warnings silly or are they necessary in order to avoid upset? Well, to debate this, we are joined by journalist Yvette Caster and the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. Good to see you both this morning. Mark, let's start with you. What do you make of this? Are trigger warnings getting silly, do you think?
Ellie, it's risible. This is ludicrous. Who is this warning supposed to inform? Who's it supposed to protect? I literally can't think of a single human being who would find that warning useful. Is it the witch community? Is it the wizard community? Who might tune in to a particular episode of Midsummer Murders or click it on their on-stream servicing and think, oh no, wait, I don't think I want to watch this one. It could be way too offensive. Now, I'm not against all warnings. I think sometimes they can send a general signal. Is something family viewing or is it graphic violence with an 18 certificate? But I'm afraid, Ellie, what we've got into here is a concern and a worry on virtually everything that's broadcast that someone somewhere might take offence, that everybody is vulnerable and may be disturbed. And that's ridiculous, it's patronising, it's potentially quite dangerous, I think. We should assume that most viewers are resilient and open-minded, not terrified and running away from a particular episode of Midsummer Murders because it features a witch.
I mean, Yvette, he's got a point, hasn't he? I mean, if anyone's going to get really upset by this episode, I mean, heaven forfend they ever come across Harry Potter.
OK, well, my feeling around trigger warnings and warnings on programmes in general is really what's the harm? I'd kind of liken it to, for example, I don't have a nut allergy, but, you know, I don't get upset by there being warnings on all types of food saying, this contains nuts or this might contain nuts, because for some people it might genuinely be harmful to them or it might potentially be unpleasant or unwarranted. So that's my feeling. It's only a few words. You know, if you're not personally affected by it, you'll just notice it and then you'll move on. I don't see why everyone's why anyone would get really upset about there being a warning.
Give me a bit. I guess the problem with that is that it feeds a narrative, isn't it, that people are being so easily offended?
No, I don't think so, because I think if we're discussing trigger warnings as a whole, if we take like another example, for example, programmes where there might be a depiction of rape or sexual violence, you have to think about the fact that 1 in 30 women have been sexually abused or raped. So it would be a good idea, I believe, to have a warning on that because they might not want to see that depiction.
Mark, what do you make of it?
There's no comparison with nut allergies here. Most people are not allergic to nuts, but if you have a serious nut allergy and you eat a nut, you might die. It can literally kill you. There is no way an episode of Midsummer Murders can kill you. You might not like witchcraft, you might be slightly offended to see witchcraft, but there is no analogy here at all. And with regard to sort of trauma around rape, murder, domestic violence, things that people may have suffered from, we get that in the round, don't we? I've just finished watching a police procedural, which I think should probably have carried a 15 certificate, but I don't need to know on each and every episode whether there might be something in it that might awaken some problem in my earlier life that might cause me some offence. I need to know, basically, is this an adult, graphic, potentially, going to have some violence in it, some bad language, for example. I wouldn't sit down with children to watch that. But there's no comparison with a nut allergy that can literally and actually kill you. Witchcraft in Midsummer Murders simply can't. And I think you would have to be a very fragile snowflake for it to even offend you, let alone kill you.
But you talked about examples in there that wouldn't affect you. But again, like if you're struggling with your mental health and there was a program, which depicted extreme sort of scenes around self-harm or suicide, if you're struggling with your mental health, you might want to know in advance that a program contains that so that you can then choose not to watch it. And yes, fine, lots of people would see that and just think, well, that's got nothing to do with me. Why does it need to be there? But it's just a few words. I mean, yes,
forgive me.
Why are you upset about it being there? I genuinely don't.
I hate to keep interrupting, but I guess the issue is there that you said extreme, and if stuff was extreme, then perhaps yes. But this is edging into areas that aren't extreme, Yvette.
Sure. I mean, with the particular one that we're talking about in witchcraft, I thought about this, and again, for this episode, that doesn't affect me because, I've got no fears or worries about witchcraft. It occurred to me maybe if you're from a particular religious background, you feel that witchcraft is somehow, you wouldn't want your children to see it. That's fair enough. That's not something that I can relate to at all. But I also watched the episode, and in actual fact, the witchcraft is involved with quite an unsavoury practice, which I don't think I can mention in the morning. So, to be honest, I think it's probably worth having a warning. Yeah.
OK, we're out of time, you two, I'm afraid, but Yvette Caster and Mark Littlewood, very good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed. You will have a view on that. Are trigger warnings getting silly? Let us know what you think, gbnews.com/you'll say. Should witchcraft count as a trigger warning?
I just think with all of that, you've got to be able to say, there are going to be some things that you see or hear that you either won't like or you may find upsetting, and you just need to be able to turn it off at that point and go, oh dear, that's upset me a little bit, and then move on. It's the fact that the implication is that if people see this, they're going to be quivering wreck on the lounge carpet.
Yeah.
As a result.
I mean, you can't go through life being wrapped in cotton wool, can you? And just never being exposed to things that you don't agree with or you don't support. I don't know.
Are we going to have warnings on Wurzel gummidge? They're repeated. A head may be removed in this episode. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just think it's crazy. I think we need to toughen up a little bit. If we're that offended by stuff like that, there's something wrong with us rather than something wrong with the TV show.
Yes, and it is 20 years old at this point.
That one.
Does it say something about us as society now?
Yes, I think so.
Anyway, it's still to come. Will England be able to chase down Pakistan in the cricket? We'll be talking about that next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in North Yorkshire. Gillygate in York is closed off the A19 at the Bootham Bar traffic lights after an accident causing delays. Buses replaced trains between Houghton and Chester because of flooding. There are a number of road closures because of flooding too. In Paris, the A490 is closed off the A483. Coed Dinas in Worcestershire, the A4103 is closed each way between Bransford and Rushwick. And in Herefordshire, the A438 is closed each way between Willersley and Mansell Gamage. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, the outside lanes closed anti-clockwise where there's an accident just after junction 17 at Maple Cross, causing queues from junction 19 at Watford. In London, the A210 Eltham Road's closed between the South Circular and A20 in Eltham after an accident causing delays. On the M27 in Hampshire, the eastbound exit at junction 7 at Hedge End is closed for emergency repairs.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's sports time. Paul Coit is here with us. Morning.
Good morning.
How's cricket looking? How's England looking, more importantly?
They're not good.
It's not good. It's even worse than that.
Oh, is it really?
Oh, things are very bad.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Oh, no.
It looked like there was a chance. I was saying needed a miracle. Well, but they've pulled things off before, England, with Bazball and the way they play. But it's not looking good. 138 for 8, second innings. They need 159 runs. 2 wickets remaining, playing in Pakistan. Spinners are on. Put it this way, it's all going to be over probably by the time I finish speaking to you.
Oh, really?
So that'll be it for that. And then it'll level it at 1-1, and then there'll be another test after that. So not good. So that's not very good. It's an interesting thing I've seen. Now, alcohol is not allowed when you watch football. If you go to watch sport anywhere around the world, like Americans or watching baseball, you know, they have their beer, popcorn and pretzels or whatever. You cannot drink beer or any alcoholic beverage looking at the pitch in the top 5 leagues of English football. Now, when I say looking at the pitch, it's legal to turn your back and drink.
No, really?
It's true, yeah. But you cannot face it. So where you have executive, even sort of executive boxes, and if there's restaurants that most clubs have, if you're sitting and you're like that and you're watching the football, you can't. You could be arrested. You'd have to turn the other way and drink it in the other. Oh, that's why you often see curtains come down in front of restaurants, because it's the law.
It's ridiculous.
It's a very bizarre one. I mean, it all goes to trouble. I mean, this is what it's all about, for trouble in the past. But anyway, allowing fans to drink alcohol in the stands is going to be trialled in the Women's Championship to see how things go.
Oh.
Now, I don't know whether they go, well, we'll give it a go, see if anybody causes any trouble. Yeah, but it seems unlikely that it actually will be moved to the Premier League. It was dismissed by police about 2 years ago when they were thinking of trialling it. So it seems unlikely, but it's a very bizarre law, isn't it? It really is, not allowed. And do you want to do a couple of birthdays?
Oh, yeah, go on.
A couple of birthdays. We're going to be going live over to Barcelona a little bit later for the America's Cup. So anyway, first one, who have we got? Sporting birthdays.
Oh, it's Martina.
It's Martina, one of the greatest tennis players of all time. Martina Navratilova. How old do you reckon Martina is today?
70.
No, 67?
68.
68.
Close.
Can I just say that was a very good guess from both of us?
Very good guess from both of you. Let's go with one more. Rugby legend Member of the royal family these days, World Cup winner from 2003, Mike Tyndall.
I'd say 52.
No, he's 46, I think. I think he's about 4 years younger than me. I think.
Is the correct answer.
Hey!
Stephen, you're very good at this.
46, very good.
Very good, very good.
Good game, good game.
Not often I get these right.
I know. And
I
by
think
the
where
way,
he hasn't got any hair, it's difficult.
well, you can make excuses, but he was still there. But listen, good news, you've won a caravan.
Hey!
Yeah, about that. There we go.
Brilliant stuff. That show's coming back, you know, apparently.
I know, so I see. Yeah.
Right.
Flintoff.
Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We've got papers for you in just a moment.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week, Free Speech Brighton, a sister group of the Free Speech Union, claimed that they were kicked out of a pub in the city for discussing trans issues in schools. The group booked a room in a pub for an evening of speeches and discussion when they claimed security guards came and asked them to leave after one speaker began to talk about this topic. Now, a clip of the evening was, in fact, posted to social media. Can you give us some background to what happened, what the event was for, and why you booked it?
Our normal pub was being refurbished, so about 3 weeks ago I went in and booked a local pub for a meeting, and they didn't ask any questions about what sort of meeting. It was in a back room. It was mainly secluded from the rest of the pub, so I thought it would be fine. But anyway, they didn't ask any questions. They took my booking. We arrived, I set up. The first speaker started speaking, who's a retired teacher who is concerned about trans in schools and how that affects children. But she was talking purely about children. She was not talking about adults who have protected characteristics, obviously. And then towards the end of her speech, I became aware of security guards standing behind me in the middle room. So I went to have a quick word with them and see what they wanted. And they said, we've had a complaint. And I said, what's the complaint? And they wouldn't say. Then they said, will you come and talk to the landlord? So I went to the front of the bar and they indicated this chap was the landlord, but he looked about 20, so I don't think he was the landlord. So I said, I hear you have a complaint about us. Can you tell me what it is? And he couldn't.
That sounds very Kafka-esque, as though you've committed a crime, but they can't tell you what the crime
is. Well, that's what I couldn't understand, because, you know, you might... Obviously, they can't tell you who the complainant is, but they should be able to tell you what the complaint is.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time for the newspapers this morning with Nigel Nelson and Claire Pearsall. Good to see you both this morning. Let's have a look at this. I was excited by this, Claire, initially. It's in the FT. HS2 could be being brought back, except it's only going to Crewe and it'll be slower.
Yes.
So what's the point?
So, well, I think the Labour government is trying very hard to prove to the north of the country that they haven't been forgotten. However, HS2 was cancelled for a number of reasons. Largely, it was over budget, it was late, it didn't have the capacity that it actually needs. And the problem that governments have when they're looking at long-term infrastructure is they look at the capacity needs now, not for the future. So by the time it's built, 10 years' time, it's going to be too little too late. But there's also another alternative on the cards, being reported in the Financial Times, of a new link between Birmingham and Manchester. So I think that it's exciting that projects are being looked at. However, I think railways as a whole need to have their capacity increased. We travel on trains into London and the commuter lines are packed, slow, the trains are dirty and horrible and old. It's very expensive. So I think that there is an awful lot to be done before we start concentrating on small patches. How about just increasing the capacity generally?
Yeah, and
what happened here really is that after Rishi Sunak cancelled HS2, the northern leg, all the regional mayors were saying, well, hang on, what about us? So this is the way to actually placate them. The question really is whether HS2 should have been built the other way round. So if the northern leg had started first, it'd be the southern leg that they've got rid of, and they probably wouldn't have done.
Well, exactly.
Or whether there should be something east to west along the M62 corridor.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what's
also
so
there's that as
desperately
well.
needed, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think everybody has that opinion. Wherever you live in the country, you're always going to think that your area is requiring a better infrastructure. So I think that east-west, that argument is probably stronger than north-south.
Unless, of course, the HS2 is going, even what they're building now is going through where you live.
Your back garden.
In which case people don't want it at all.
No.
To the Daily Mail, Nigel, and the NHS getting record complaints.
Yeah, well, I mean, we certainly know now that the NHS is sort of no longer the great religion of Britain. People are dissatisfied with the service. And what's being reported at the moment is the complaints are up now to, these are written complaints, up to 242,000.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's a 12,000 increase since the previous year. And I think that just it reflects the fact that we've got to the point, we can see the NHS is not working properly. Anybody who tries to get a GP appointment has a struggle doing it. And so people have actually, for the first time, become disillusioned with it. I mean, there was a period where no politician wanted to talk about real reform of the NHS, because everyone would accuse them of, oh, you're going to privatise it or something like that. Anything that was actually interfering with the NHS, the public sort of reacted badly to. Now we're in a situation where I think everyone's so fed up with it, reform is really genuinely on the cards.
Anything is better than what we've got.
Basically, yeah.
But I think the problem is that even when you complain about something in the NHS, and I've done it myself, lodged a complaint, and you get a lot of nice words coming back to you, but nothing fundamentally changes from it. And I think that's the frustration, is that people will complain, nothing changes, and then people just go, well, what's the point? So we're left with bad service, buildings falling down, and yes, you can have your argument with the politicians, but also you need to be able to address it with the hospital bosses themselves, and they're seemingly not listening.
Claire, let's have a look at the Daily Mail, shall we? And this story about the Labour MPs campaigning to ban fireworks that are louder than a hairdryer, which is most of them.
Every single year, there will be a petition or a backbench debate in the House of Commons regarding fireworks. It's inevitable as the season approaches. Now, there are some pets that suffer with stress and anxiety with loud noises, and there are some people who also suffer with that. If they have PTSD, those kind of noises can affect them. However, starting to look at it as if, you know, can you make them quieter? I don't know. Is it going to make any difference? Because surely it's the noise, the explosion. It doesn't matter how loud it is. It's going to affect.
Dogs will hear it anyway, won't they?
They will. Their hearing is way better than ours and always will be.
Well, you either have fireworks or you don't, and a firework makes a bang. Otherwise, what's the point of it? The only thing I would say is that it should be restricted to bonfire night and New Year's Eve. Too often, you sort of suddenly you hear, you know, outside up where we live. It sounds like Beirut every so often because we bangs all over the place during the summer, and there's no reason for that. If you restrict it to the occasions when it should be, at least you know what to expect.
Well, yes, I would agree with that.
And you can get quiet fireworks in shops. And I know that there are a couple of schools locally that do it for kids on the autistic spectrum who cannot cope with that kind of loud bangs and flashes, and they're actually a lot quieter.
You can get indoor fireworks that you can light on your kitchen table.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, they're not any good.
No, exactly.
No, they're not. I mean, but there are...
You just light a candle instead.
Well, yeah.
But there are those fireworks available, but I don't think it's necessarily the greatest use of parliamentary time to start looking at it.
Ridiculous. They'll be trying to reduce the price of a Freddo bar next.
5 pence. I hear that's allegedly the going rate.
Nigel, in the Daily Mail, got a nice piece about being irritated by people you work with.
Indeed, and what ACAS have come up with is the top 3 that irritates you. Let's see if either of these work.
Let's see if we can relate.
Right,
Yeah.
so colleagues who do their jobs badly, that's the number 1. That's what irritates people in the workplace.
Oh, not here.
Not getting enough information to do your job is another one. Micromanaging, that's number 3. That's what people really hate. I think that we should add to the list getting up at 3:15 to do a breakfast show.
That is quite annoying.
There's always a difficult one, that one.
It's tricky, but I think that this list is all very serious because actually workplace complaints are a lot broader. I mean, this is also, management and not feeling respected or listened to, when realistically you've always got that one person who doesn't wash up a cup.
I thought it'd be stuff like that.
People.
Yeah, untidy people.
One of my colleagues, apologies, George, for this, eats in the office and then leaves dirty cutlery around. That drives me insane. And I've told him that, so it's going to come as no surprise to him.
Or when someone offers or doesn't offer to make a cup of tea but makes one for themselves.
Absolutely.
That's really
if you're going to make tea, you've got to do a round.
No.
Well, what's your pet peeve?
I just get my own when I come in the morning.
Do you? But I'm not here when that happens, so I don't get offended by that.
Oh, but I think it's really basic stuff like that. I mean, I'm quite lucky. The majority of the time I'm working on my own or at home, and I only have to contend with Nigel.
I just get irritated by stupid mistakes. Stupid mistakes. Genuine mistakes I can cope with, but when it's just stupid because no one's thought it through, that I get really annoyed with.
And the other one is pointless meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's really annoying. This could have been an email.
Could have been an email.
Yeah, don't like
lovely.
that at all.
Right, thank you very much indeed, you two. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Let's have a look at the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea, and that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland, with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself. A damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in North Yorkshire. Gilly Gate in York is closed off the A19 at the Bootham Bar traffic lights after an accident causing delays. Buses replaced trains between Hooton and Chester because of flooding. A number of road closures too because of flooding. And Powys, the A490 is closed off the A483 at Coed of Dinas. In Worcestershire, the A4103 is closed each way between Bransford and Rushwick. And the A4380 in Herefordshire is closed each way between Willersley and Mansell Gamage. On the M6 in the West Midlands, the outside lanes closed southbound at Junction 5 near to Birmingham after an accident causing delays. In Northamptonshire, Geddington Road in Corby is closed because of a fire. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, the outside lanes closed anti-clockwise just after Junction 17 at Maple Cross after an accident with queues back beyond Junction 19 at Watford. And in London, the A210 Eltham Road is closed between the South Circular and A20 in Eltham after an accident yesterday evening.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Luck. Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. The Tory leadership hopefuls clash in a GB News special.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick can't find common ground on the controversial topic of leaving the European Convention of Human Rights.
Well, Mr Jenrick called the treaty's ruling shameful. Mrs Badenoch bit back.
There's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
I think that the ECHR argument is not the right one. I think that is the biggest weakness. I think it will divide our party. It will mean that the infighting and squabbling will continue. If we want to end the drama, we need to do this the right way. Let's come to a consensus.
Well, Robert Jenrick is going to join us very shortly for his reaction to this and more.
I don't just go on media just for the sake of going on media. I go on media when I have something to say.
Australia prepares to greet the King and Queen. They'll arrive this morning for that much-anticipated tour.
A day on from the death of Liam Payne, One Direction have released a heartfelt statement, and Simon Cowell takes a step back from the limelight.
World leaders hope an end to the fighting could be in sight, Israel confirming it's killed the architect of the October 7th attacks. So, could the Middle East be starting to come back from the brink?
Well, that's as Foreign Secretary David Lammy lands in China to talk strategy. But is Sir Keir Starmer's reset of world relations all it's cracked up to be?
ITV ridiculed after an episode of Midsummer Murders includes a trigger warning for witchcraft. We're debating this morning whether content warnings are really necessary. And just to warn you, here is Paul Coyte. You may find it disturbing.
Yeah, the most disturbing picture that there's been so far. Yes. It was me. OK, hide away, everybody. In the sport this morning, England have had a very bad day and have just lost the second test to Pakistan. And also, when it comes to the America's Cup, we're going to be going live over to Barcelona as Great Britain need to win these two races to go 4-all.
A calm and misty start to Friday for many of us before it turns increasingly wet and windy from the west. A number of low-pressure systems to watch out for during the next few days. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. On the topic of trigger warnings, loads of you getting in touch this morning. Clive says, I saw a warning on TV the other day that the episode contained smoking. What is that all about?
What, smoking?
Yeah, well, Well, why is there a trigger warning for smoking?
This is an interesting one from Union Jack, who says, with regard to Midsummer Murders, the title of the programme has murder in it. It's not easy to mistake it for a cooking programme.
It's true. And if you're not offended by murder, you probably won't be offended by witchcraft, I would suggest.
It's just crazy. It's just ridiculous.
Do you think...
It's honestly, it's just madness, for crying out loud.
I think everybody agrees on this one. Jackie says, good grief, a warning called Midsummer Murders. I'm traumatised someone got murdered. Why did nobody warn me?
Yeah.
Well, I was quite disappointed. I was watching it, I was thinking, oh, my God, there's midsummer in this. I can't believe it. I thought it was a winter programme.
Judy says, because of my Christian faith, I try to be careful what I watch that is not in line with these values. This includes extreme violence and witchcraft, which is, you know, a valid point, if that's what you want to do, Judy. But I guess the argument with this is, let's say you probably wouldn't be watching a programme about murder, would you? Again.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is... But as I say, do we then have to have warnings at Harry Potter?
Well, let's be honest. Is the bottom line, is this all about people that are going to go out and do this now? Is this why we're warning? You're going to be really upset because you're going to see someone smoking. You're going to be really upset because you see someone do it.
Yes.
Is it going to make... all of a sudden... It's like all these warnings. Listen, don't try this at home. Here's someone jumping off a 300-foot cliff, diving into the water, and we had to do that. It's like... Why? Yeah. Surely.
That's crazy.
Well, common sense from June, perhaps,
yes.
who says, for goodness sake, if you don't like something on the TV, turn over to another channel. We have remotes, use them. Very well said, June.
That's a very good point.
Just switch over if you don't like it.
Right. Now, before we talk about politics, we're going to talk about the royals today.
Yes, because today marks the first time that a reigning British monarch has visited Australia for 13 years.
It's going to be the King's first time in the country since he ascended the throne. He'll be welcomed by the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
Well, GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker is in Sydney.
Well, here's a bit of trivia for you. When King Charles touches down in Australia later on today, he will become the first ever reigning king to step foot on Australian soil. And of course, it's a trip which had a huge question mark over it because, of course, the king was diagnosed with cancer earlier on this year, and it wasn't thought whether or not it would be possible for the king to visit. Doctors have allowed him to pause his cancer treatments while he is in Australia, and of course carrying on to Samoa in the South Pacific later on for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. But there have been certain concessions made. For example, New Zealand was originally on the cards for the king to visit. That is no longer happening. Equally, there are a number of rest breaks factored in. For example, King Charles will not be carrying out any engagements tomorrow, as in Saturday. He is purely going to be resting, which perhaps has disappointed some racegoers because there was some speculation whether or not the King and Queen would attend Randwick Racecourse tomorrow in Sydney for the King Charles III Stakes, of course named after him. That, I understand, is not happening. He purely will be resting. Other engagements have been added, though. For example, the King will be visiting or meeting 2 cancer experts who are Australians of the Year for their work tackling melanoma, a skin cancer, which is one of the most common forms of cancer in Australia. But of course, this trip is very short compared to the late Queen's first visit to Australia. She spent 58 days in the country, visiting every capital city apart from Darwin. King Charles only here for 6 days and visiting New South Wales, Sydney and Canberra. But of course, we need to remember that the Queen was 27 when she visited for the first time. King Charles is 75 years old. But how is he going to be received? Well, to be honest, it depends who you ask. Republicans, the Australian Republicans, are calling it the farewell tour of Oz. Graham Smith, that Republican campaign from the United Kingdom, he has flown over here. He plans to be protesting outside the Parliament in Canberra on Monday with those big yellow signs that we have perhaps come used to with various royal engagements in the United Kingdom. But perhaps more significantly, every single state's premier in Australia, that's the politician in charge of each state in Australia, they have snubbed an official reception with King Charles and Queen Camilla in Canberra on Monday. There's been various excuses for anything from a cabinet meeting to a trade envoy visit. We spoke to some Australians a little bit earlier, and here's what they said.
We're so excited about it.
Are you?
Yes. We actually saw him when we were in, where was that? Oh, in Windsor. In Windsor. Not really interested.
You're not really interested in the King coming?
No. I believe Australia should become a republic.
Australians are going to welcome Charles and Camilla down under?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Yeah, we're friendly people.
Sort of happy to see them. I'm glad they're coming out. It's good that they're showing some support for the country. It's kind of cool. Something to read about in the news, I guess.
I think everybody's just doing their thing and we should let them. I think it's all good. We welcome pretty much everybody here.
Well, tonight, following the King's arrival in Australia, Sydney Opera House will light up with images of King Charles throughout his visits, 16 visits to Australia so far. And keep tuning in to GB News because we will be bringing you that coverage live for the King and Queen's first visit down under since the King took the throne.
It seemed like a nice bunch, I think.
They do. I think they sound very friendly, and even the ones that don't really like the idea of the royals, they're not rude about it, are they? They're like, oh, you know, it's fine.
No, I'd like to go down under and meet the King at the same time. Why not?
We should have gone with Cameron Walker, I suggest.
Anyway, we can't meet the King today, but we can meet someone who may be Conservative leader in just a few weeks. That's as the candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out last night at that special GB News event.
Yes, they clashed on a wide range of issues, including Britain's membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, illegal migration and culture wars.
Yes, but Kemi Badenoch did take aim at Robert Jenrick's media appearances.
I don't just go on media just for the sake of going on media. I go on media when I have something to say. That is how we run things. I don't believe anyone thinks that I am scared of scrutiny. I had it every day as a Member of Parliament and as a Minister.
Live in the studio now is Robert Jenrick. Good to see you this morning, Robert.
Good morning, it's good to be here.
Let's start.
And I do enjoy going on your programme.
And you did, because we spoke to you last week, didn't we? We're speaking to you again today.
Did.
You've been very open in speaking to the media. Kemi Badenoch, well, not pulling her punches yesterday, saying that she only goes on the media when she's got something to say. What do you think of that?
I believe this is an important job. I am not just auditioning to be the leader of the opposition. I want to be the next Prime Minister of this country. I think that I should put myself on your programme. I should be held accountable. I think what we saw last night was a great debate, but I want to see head-to-head debates. Why wouldn't we do that? You know, Kemi and I should be properly scrutinised for this job. Otherwise, we're letting down the membership of this party and ultimately the public.
Why wasn't it a head-to-head debate last night? Did she not want to do it?
Well, as I understand it, she hasn't been willing to do head-to-head debates. There have been proposals to them with The Sun, with the BBC, with Sky. They haven't gone ahead. Let's do one. Let's do one next week, and then the public can see the actual policies being debated, because that's what really matters here, isn't it? Does the Conservative Party want to win the next general election? I wanted you. I don't want to just be in opposition for 10 years. We can't consign this party and this country to 10 years of Labour government.
In terms of those policies, I mean, obviously your key policy would seem to be the ECHR, because it's a block to the immigration problem, as you see it, that we have in this country. It was quite an interesting response from Kemi Badenoch last night when she said, well, actually, I think that's a weakness because I think we need to avoid this as an issue and until we've consolidated our view, in effect. I just wonder if consolidating the view is ever going to happen.
Well, look, I think there's a clear choice here, isn't there? Do you want a plan today or the promise of one tomorrow? And I don't think any leadership contender is worthy of your vote if they can't stand in front of you now and say, where do they stand? Because it's a simple choice. Do you want to remain within the ECHR and continue to have foreign criminals on our streets, terrorists who we can't remove, and borders which are not secure? Or do you want to leave and end this farce once and for all? I'm for leave. And members of the party, and frankly the general public, know with me that I can be trusted on this issue. I resigned from Cabinet because I felt so strongly on it. If I am elected leader of this party, we'll have a very clear position. And that, frankly, that's the only way in which we'll get the votes back who went to Reform. You know, 4 million of our voters went to Reform because they were so angry and frustrated at us on this very issue, securing our borders. And if we don't get them back, we will be in opposition for years to come. So the ultimate choice is opposition or government. I want to take us back into government.
Is that why you've suddenly swung to the right, as many would say, in order to get those voters who defected to Reform back over immigration? Because there are people who are suspicious of your lurch to the right, as they would see it. You were a Remainer, famously. You're a moderate Tory, as many would say, and there's reports in some of the papers that you quietly told your colleagues that if you were elected party leader, you would pivot the party back to the centre.
No, look, my values have never changed. My values are rooted in my upbringing. The town I grew up in, Wolverhampton, they are about the nation-state, their family, their small business, free enterprise, patriotism. All those are my values. But it's certainly true that my experience at the Home Office taught me that we will never secure our borders and keep the British people safe unless we do what I'm proposing, a cap on legal migration and leaving the ECHR. And there's a choice for the party's members. Do you want to speak in platitudes, or do you want to have policies? Do you want to have a path to get back into government, or do you want to remain in opposition? I know where I stand on those things.
I'm quite intrigued by. I mean, I know it's a job for the opposition at the moment. However, the idea of saying, well, you get back into government, you'd leave the ECHI, you'd sort all this out. You know better than the rest of us that the Home Office is a nightmare. It's not fit for purpose. It hasn't been for a long time. And actually reforming what the Home Office does and how it operates is a mammoth task. Could you do it?
Well, I've said in the past that we should abolish the Home Office. I think we should set up a proper borders department staffed by people who are determined to fix this problem, who are not just interested in providing support to those who come to this country, but want to secure our borders. But I think it's an excuse to say, oh, it's all the civil service. Look, we are ultimately in charge. We are the politicians. You want to elect leaders who will drive this country in the right direction. And that's why I say, end the drama, end these excuses, and just deliver for the people of this country. And that requires a proper path, the policies that will persuade a deeply sceptical public that we are serious on these issues. The public know how strongly I feel about this. They now see that I have very clear answers to these problems. The alternative, my opponent has no plan at all. It's the promise of a plan tomorrow. That is a recipe for more infighting within the Tory party and more loss of public trust.
I mean, unity has got to be the #1 priority for whoever wins this leadership election, because the party is in absolute disarray. Do you have a clear vision of what is the Tory party? Who is the Tory party? What does it even stand for anymore? Only 121 MPs left. I mean, unity has got to be the most important thing to whoever wins this.
It has. Look, we've got to get the Conservative family back together. And that doesn't just mean uniting the 121 Conservative MPs, important though that is. It means getting back all small C Conservatives, people who watch your programme. Some will have voted Conservative this election. Some will have voted Reform. Some won't have voted at all. Some will have voted for Labour, the Liberals. I want to get all small C Conservatives back into our family. That is my task. And I think you do that by having a very clear set of policies which sets out where do we stand on the big issues facing our country, not just talking in empty platitudes, and ending this drama, the chaos that we've seen in recent years, and delivering for the British people.
I wonder if that's the dividing line between you two, because we've got to try and find one, really. The idea that, and maybe she'll correct me if I'm getting Mrs. Badenoch's position wrong, but it sounds like she wants to consolidate the party and then find a direction to go in, whereas you seem to be saying, I am going to lead and people will follow.
Yeah, well, there are obvious dividing lines. I want to cap legal migration. My opponent won't say that. I want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. She doesn't want to do that, or won't say so today. So it's a promise of a plan tomorrow versus an actual plan today. But the point you're making, I think, is right. But where we differ is I don't think the Conservative Party has time. You've seen in 100 days the damage this Labour government has made. I don't want to wait 10 years in opposition. And you've got Reform snapping at our heels. They're not going anywhere. If anything, they're consolidating, they're rising. If the Conservative Party wants to exist in a few years' time, let alone win the next election, it's got to get serious on these issues, in particular on immigration, because that's the principal reason, not the only one. That's why I also talk about the NHS and the economy. But it's the principal reason why we lost so much faith from the British people at this election. So unless we get serious, we're consigning this party to years in opposition and a very uncertain future.
Unless you fall down the trap that obviously Rishi Sunak did of promising the earth but not actually delivering it.
Well, that's why I think you have to make these difficult choices. You can't say you're going to secure our borders and not say you're going to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. It's just not possible. The European Convention on Human Rights prevents us from getting those terrorists, those foreign criminals, out of our country, from securing our borders. We've seen time and again examples of it. Think of that Ugandan man the other day who had murdered somebody in the back of a taxi in London, and then we couldn't get him out of this country back to Uganda because, citing the ECHR, a British court said Uganda wouldn't protect his mental health. That is one example of many. So if you want to be serious on this issue, the inevitable answer is to leave the ECHR. That's why I feel strongly about this. You know, some people, not on GB News, thankfully, but some in the Westminster media say, why do I bang on about immigration? Well, because this is so important to people in this country and because it's so critical to the future of the Conservative Party. If we get the choice wrong in the next few days, we are consigning the party to years in the political wilderness.
If you win this leadership race, do you think you could survive 5 years, considering the infighting, considering the chaos that we've been talking about, considering the momentum behind reform at the moment? Could you survive 5 years? Could you potentially become Prime Minister?
Yes, absolutely. Look, I'll unite the Conservative Party. I've worked with people on all sides, but I'll unite it around a very clear set of principles and policies. And that's the key thing here, because it's with those policies that we're going to take the fight to reform. We're going to bring those people back home to us. I'm not going to denigrate reform, but I do want to put them out of business and bring those natural small C Conservatives back to us. If that doesn't happen, because we make the wrong choice in the next few weeks, then I think reform are going to continue to rise. The Conservative Party's position will weaken, and we will be in opposition for years. I'm not just applying to be leader of the opposition, let alone a temporary one, as you suggest. I want to be the next Prime Minister of this country, and that is the choice. Do you want a leader of the opposition, shouting at Keir Starmer at the dispatch box, but ultimately going nowhere? Or do you want the next Prime Minister of this country who can get the Conservatives back into government and take this country in a Conservative direction again?
You talk a good fight, right? And a lot of people will agree with you. However, I mean, you've only got to look at what the bets of the odds are, and it's on Kemi Badenoch. The studio audience last night in a show of hands were for Kemi Badenoch. Why do you think your message doesn't seem to be necessarily cutting through with Conservative Party members?
Well, I totally disagree. If you had asked what the chances of me being sat in the studio were as one of the final 2, 3, 4 months ago, it was 66 to 1. No one was putting bets on that. I've since come through the middle. All these other people who were far better known than me have fallen by the wayside. This is neck and neck. The only reliable poll that was conducted a few weeks ago by YouGov said it was within the margin of error. I think the momentum is with me. Yes, the studio audience last night was a very London-centric one. But look, I think that people across the country are listening and my message is resonating. What I want the Conservative Party membership to do is to focus on the big choice here. Do you want to win the next election? And the polling on that shows, every single poll confirms this. If you want to win, I am the best placed candidate to do that. There was an MRP poll out just a couple of days ago which said that if I was leader and there was a general election tomorrow, before I even got started, we would be in a hung parliament, whilst under my opponent, Keir Starmer would still be Prime Minister with a clear majority. That's the choice. Win or stay in opposition. I want this party to win.
Okay. Interesting. Robert Jenrick, really good to see you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
much. Nice to see you.
And we, as always, have an open invitation to Kemi Badenoch if she would like to come on the programme. So far, she hasn't. But she's very, very welcome, and we'd love to
We'll always welcome.
her.
We'll always make time for her if she'd like to come and join us on breakfast.
Right, it's 8:21. Let's have a look at some of the other headlines this morning.
And some breaking news now, and the French Coast Guard are reporting that a baby has drowned after a boat carrying migrants capsized this morning off the French coast heading towards Britain.
Also today, authorities continuing to investigate the death of singer Liam Payne following his sudden death after falling from a hotel balcony in Argentina. Tributes flooding in. Former members of One Direction have released a joint statement, and Simon Cowell has announced he's not heading back to Britain's Got Talent for the time being.
Israel has confirmed the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar in Gaza. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has since said evil has suffered a heavy blow, but Israel's task is not complete. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says the UK will not mourn his death and called for a release of all hostages.
And it's about time. The National Gallery in London is putting new security measures in place. No liquids, no large bags. It's after Just Stop Oil keep throwing tomato soup at paintings like Van Gogh's Sunflowers. The gallery said we've reached a point where we have been forced to act to protect our visitors, staff and the collection. I was just looking on the views, and
Yeah.
I've just got to reload it, sad, because I just wondered if you've been in touch about what Mr. Jenrick had to say. But needless
It's
to say,
just loading, isn't it?
technology is failing me at the moment on that. So we'll dig that up for you in just a second. Oh, here we go. Here we go. And this is where no one's emailed in about it. I bet you have. So Gillian says, can someone tell me what will actually happen if we leave the ECHR? It seems to me that it won't change much, because the boats will still come and the government will still have no clear answers to deporting them. But the argument there would be, of course, that the lawyers that get involved in this can then cite the ECHR to prevent people from being removed.
Peter's just said, 14 years of broken promises and my trust in politicians has gone. Reform, led by Nigel Farage, would put the people of the UK first.
Jenrick has just showed the infighting is alive and well, but that's from someone who calls himself a reform voter. Derek Nash says, I think Stephen is a bit biased towards Jenrick. Thanks very much indeed. No, that's who we have in the studio, so I'm just trying to put the point across. But I'd be we would really want Kemi Badenoch to come on this programme.
Yes, we have an open invitation to Kemi Badenoch. Not yet accepted.
But she just doesn't want to do it at the moment. She said last night, I only do media when I have something to say. Well, I would hope she has got something to say.
Yeah, especially now, in the next few weeks. You'd hope so, wouldn't you? Keep those views coming in, gbnews.com/you'll say. Should we have a look at the weather with Aidan?
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea. And that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland, with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself, a damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, did that go out on air?
Probably, knowing me.
Yes. She did miss announcing she'd had enough.
Only because...
Yeah. That's what happens when people work with me. Yeah, it's not the first time.
It's not true. It's not true. When we were talking about things that wind you up at the office, I couldn't think of anything that winds. That is so sweet.
No, well, exactly the same.
Whereas
actually.
No, stop. You could probably write a list of 10 items that annoys you. Yeah.
No, not about you. No.
Oh, really?
No.
That's good.
One or two others.
Tell me more in the break.
All the backroom staff. Oh, I can tell you a tale or two. Anyway, look, forget all that. You need to get your hands on some money. £36,000. 1 week today, actually. Yep. Oh, the VT will say 2 weeks. It's 1 week today. So get your entry in, because if you want to be in a chance with winning, then you've got to send your details in. Here's how.
There's only two on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed. Now, do stay with us. Still to come, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, is in China. Find out why next.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
We shouldn't have to do this, Rebecca. These men should have been compensated long ago.
They shouldn't have to fight for recognition. And this is what's happened over the last 72 years. So all the way through from the test through to the present day, they've known that something happened to them. They've seen what they've been through, their medical conditions, the fact that many of these servicemen died well before their time. And they were ignored in a way that other countries didn't ignore their similar testing veterans. So other nuclear powers across the world, the US, for example, compensated and recognised their nuclear testing veterans many, many years ago. Yet, unfortunately, successive governments in the UK failed to do that. After the long campaign for medallic recognition, finally, these servicemen received medallic recognition, but it came in a jiffy bag in the post, which is not the way to honour the service that these men gave to our country. There needs to be an understanding and an uncovering of the truth of what they actually went through. They've been fighting for many years for access to their medical records, for example, urine and blood tests that they know were taken during their service. But when many of these families have tried to access their records, these test results seem to be missing, and there's no explanation as to why this has happened.
What basis does the Ministry of Defence say it's not our responsibility?
Well, we know from other studies across the world and subsequent studies, it showed, staggeringly that these men were exposed to the same amount of radiation as clean-up workers at Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, she's found something she doesn't like about me. But anyway, there you go.
There we are.
It
It didn't take us long. We found out in a few minutes, didn't we?
Anyway, look, let's talk about David Lammy, should we? At 8:32, the Foreign Secretary, of course. He's now in Beijing for an official two-day trip.
Well, it's part of his promise to adopt a more consistent strategy on foreign policy after what he says was 14 years of Tory failure.
Not without controversy, though, this trip. With MPs sanctioned by China for raising human rights concerns. Whether the UK should really be working with China at all?
Yes.
Big economic partner, though.
Well, joining us now is former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood. Good to see you this morning, Tobias. It is a big question, though, isn't it? Should the UK be working with China? It's caught my eye that part of this trip, David Lammy, this two-day visit to China, is to feature in-depth talks enhancing mutual trust between the two nations. Can we trust China?
We can't trust China at all. It's very, very clear that China is pursuing an alternative interpretation of our rules-based order. China is linking up with Russia and indeed Iran and coercing many, many countries across Asia through its One Belt, One Road program to really challenge Western values and standards. And that's the big concern. But China is not going away in our lifetimes, militarily, economically, technologically. China will challenge America's dominance in those fields. So we need to find a method of all working together. Otherwise, our world will splinter into two spheres of competing areas, and that will inevitably lead to conflict. We're already seeing it to some degree in parts of the world. So going to China, I think, is important, but it's what you say when you're there that is absolutely critical. And you touched on some of those things that need to be raised. Why are MPs banned from going there? I applied for a visa myself, was not told why, but was refused. And we've turned a blind eye to those human rights abuses, the democratic deficit there. Indeed, there's been an absence of strategy, if you like, where there's been hope that China would embrace Western norms and standards as it grew economically, and that clearly hasn't happened.
And obviously there's concerns about Uyghur Muslims, there's concerns about actually what has happened in Hong Kong since we handed that back all those years ago. But whereas there are legitimate concerns, it is a case, isn't it, as you've got to keep your friends close and your enemies closer with this, as you say. If we isolate them, they're just going to pair up even closer with Russia and North Korea.
You mentioned that. I mean, not just the aggression in Hong Kong and the militarization of the South China Sea, taking islands out there and turning them into maritime fortresses, but also the manipulation of the digital world. But the biggest problem has been the failure to honor World Trade Organization rules, how economically we work with each other. And that's China's Achilles heel, is the fact that as it's growing, it needs to trade with the rest of the world, but it's doing so on its own terms because we're not strong enough to stand up to that. And that, I think, is where the world needs to get together, not just Britain alone, but when you add together the GDP of the G7, the EU, and so forth, you've got over half the world's GDP. We be able to stand up and say, these are the rules that we're going to trade with. You either abide by them or you don't. But that requires a grand strategy. And there is an absence of any strategy as to how we handle China. And in that absence, in that void, China is taking full advantage of that to pursue its own clear strategy of dominating the Asian area, and indeed then allowing Russia to do so, pursue its agenda in Europe and indeed Iran in the Middle East. All these are interconnected now with this bizarre axis that's developed. You've got a theocratic republic in Iran. You've got a centralized autocracy in Russia, and then you've got a communist dictatorship in China. These are three countries that should have very little to do with each other, but they are teaming up, as I say, to pursue a competing interpretation of global order.
OK, Tobias Elwood, we're out of time with you, I'm afraid, but always good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's an interesting one. It's an area, a topic of discussion which is not going to go away anytime soon. Right, we've got the sport heading away in just a couple of minutes, the latest on the America's Cup.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In North Yorkshire, Chilligate in York's closed off the A19 at the Booth and Bar traffic lights after an accident with long delays towards there. And as you divert, buses replaced trains between Hooton and Chester because of flooding, and a number of road closures too because of flooding. In Paris, the A490 is closed each way off the A483 Coed Dinnes. In Worcestershire, the A4103 is closed each way between Bransford and Rushwick, and in Herefordshire, the A438 is closed each way between Willersley and Mansell Gamage. In Northamptonshire, Geddington Road in Corby is closed because of a fire. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, the outside lanes closed anti-clockwise just after junction 17 at Maple Cross after an accident with queues from junction 20 at Kings Langley. In London, the A210 Eltham Road is closed between the South Circular and A20 Sidcup Road in Eltham after an accident yesterday evening. In Kent, the A260 is closed along Hill Road in Folkestone where a car's overturned, and in Devon, the A38 is closed each way between Ivy Bridge and Rangerton Cross.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, It happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Paul Coyte's here, thank you, with all the sport at 8:40.
The morning is running away with us, Paul.
It is.
I know, isn't it?
Should we have a quick word on the cricket?
The cricket cycling.
What is
so
people
much
doing?
sport. What are we to
Cricket.
do? Let's do a little bit of cricket. England lost the second test against Pakistan in Multan by 152 runs. It was all done and dusted this morning when we went on air at 6. I was saying it's going to be tricky. Then I said it's going to be a miracle, and now it's all over. England were chasing 297. Bowled out for 144 before lunch. The test decider will be in Rawalpindi on Thursday.
OK.
So there we are. That's what I have for you.
Right, let's talk about the boat race now that we're going to win.
Yes. Now, this is the other real big sporting event for us today. The America's Cup, Ineos Britannia, 4-2 down. By the way, Britain won the first America's Cup point since 1934. I still find this very bizarre, the fact that it's been so long that we are essentially a seafaring nation. But it's not working for us. But over in Barcelona, at the moment, our great friend and the voice of yachting, the voice of the boats, Alec Wilkinson. Morning, Alec.
Good morning, and it is a splendid morning here in Barcelona. It's fantastic.
Oh,
hi, Stephen, Ellie.
Hi.
Look at that! What a place to be, and how you must be so excited because I've learned about sailing as I'm going, as you know, and this is a huge day, isn't it?
Well, it is a huge day. Wednesday was an even bigger day because that was. You know, they were 4-0 down, Britain going into that, having talked a lot about, well, we need to make some tweaks, we need to improve little things, but we'll get there in the end. And you thought, well, at 4-0 down, if you don't come back with at least one win, then you're done for. And they came back and won back-to-back races. So we're standing at 4-2. So today is not going to decide it because it's the first to 7, remember. But if it doesn't go Britain's way, then it could all be done and dusted by Saturday. So it's another big day for Sir Ben Ainsley and his team. But they've started to deliver. They've started to perform just in time. And fingers crossed they pull it back.
First 4 races did go against us, didn't they? I know you'd complained about dodgy umpiring decisions. There was some bad luck as well, I guess. So that's out the way now.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, no one had seen the Kiwi boat in action at all, really. They didn't have data from it because the way it works is as a qualifier, and Britain was a qualifier, you go through the qualifying stages, but the defender doesn't have to go through that. They just wait for you in the match. So they're developing their boat all the time based on what they're seeing in the qualifying rounds, but no one actually knows what to expect when the defender goes out on the water. So I think for Britain, it was a bit of a shock. They've got technicians, Formula One guys working in Northamptonshire, looking at all the data coming off the water. They were working with them. They were working with their coaches. And it seems they might have just turned this around.
A few of these, probably not going back 173 years, it's fair to say, Alec, but we've never had any success. Like I said, it was 1934, last time we won a point in the America's Cup. It's been a long time coming. Have you got a good feeling about this, or daren't you say?
Look, I think so much is also dependent on conditions. We've seen that the Kiwis are pretty good in light conditions. Today is quite breezy here, and that would suit the British.
Oh, we've lost him. We've lost him. It's gone.
He was just about to say. I think that was a good sign, though, wasn't it?
That's the Kiwis.
You know what?
The Kiwis.
I think you're right.
Someone's pulled his phone.
Sabotage.
Out.
Yeah, it is sabotage. But anyway, 4-2 we're at. 2 races this afternoon.
It's all to play for.
And if Sir Ben Ainsley can get them back to 4-4, who knows?
We're gonna get
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
We're
Been waiting a long time.
We feel hopeful, we'll say that much.
Yes, we do.
Thanks,
Very hopeful.
Coity.
Have a lovely weekend.
You too.
See you next week. All right, let's have a look at... No, well, in a moment, we'll have a look at the papers.
Getting ahead of yourself.
I am. Nigel and Claire will be here in just a sec.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset by his
There was
wedding.
a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out because...
They had turfs on the...
turfs. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time to see what's making the news at 8:47 with Claire Pearsall and Nigel Nelson. We weren't going to talk about the leadership debate last night, but I think we better had after what was being said in the break there. Nigel, you thought Kemi performed better.
I did. I mean, the whole thing about it was that look, I wouldn't vote for either of them, and if I had a vote, which I don't, I'd spoil my ballot paper.
Would you?
Yeah, on the basis that both of them are ideologically on the right, so there isn't really a great choice for the Tory party membership. However, judging by the GB News debate last night, I would have said Kemi walked it. She did really well. And the reason was that she came across as the more grown-up of the two. That you had Robert Jenrick talking about policy, mostly about immigration. The point that she was making was that, hang on, we're 5 years out from a general election. We can't possibly know what the situation will be then. And if you remember that Keir Starmer got into a problem over this.
Well, is that a decent argument? She's saying, well, what's the point in all this policy when we don't know where we're going to be?
No. Because if you are looking to get your membership interested in a candidate, you want to know what they stand for. And you found out nothing. She said, I'm not going to make any policy, I'm not going to make any announcements, other than the VAT on private schools. That was the only one that she slipped up on her own rules. But I want to know what they stand for. I want to know what they think on a whole range of subjects. I don't want to just hear about immigration. Surprisingly, I speak about it a lot, but I don't want to hear just about that. I want to hear what they've got, transport, education, what they would do with net zero. I mean, there's a little bit of that. But it's just, it doesn't feel to me as if we're getting the full range of opinion. I suppose what goes in Robert's favour is that he is willing to come on the media. And I think, why hide away? Is there a reason that somebody is not out on the media? And he seems to be putting himself out there, which is a bonus point.
Well, she says, I only do the media when I've got something to say.
Yeah.
But to that you'd
she
say...
hasn't done any media.
Do you not have something to say to the people that are going to be voting for you?
Yes, I mean, I think that she should do media. I mean, the idea that she shied away from it is a bit silly, because obviously she has something to say. She's standing for the leadership of the party. So it's perfectly true that Robert Jenrick's put himself out there. That's good. She hasn't. That's a black mark. But I do take the point about this idea that, hang on, let's get the trust back in the party. Let's have a conversation about where the party wants to go.
But hold on, isn't there an argument with that to say, instead of having an endless debate about where the party should be going, if someone leads, people will follow?
Yeah, and I think, but you have to give them some kind of inspiration.
You can't imagine Margaret Thatcher sort of having some great debates about, well, what should we do about this?
No, but you've got a divided party now. I mean, at the moment, the choice is between two right-wingers. You've just had a party elected to government which is centre-left. The second biggest party with the Lib Dems, they hardly mentioned the Lib Dems last night. They're a much bigger threat to both the Tory party and indeed the Labour Party.
So it's interesting, both candidates, particularly Kemi Badenoch, actually pitching themselves as not as One Nation Tories, but appealing to One Nation
Well, they've got to try and unite the party. I mean, if you take...
But I'm not sure that they've got anything that they're appealing to them with. I think that's...
Well, they would say the fact she wants to remain with the ECHR. It's
so
why they should vote Kemi.
Small aspect, and they feel that's the outreach that the One Nation needs.
That's what they're being advised this week, according to the papers.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't buy it. And you speak to a lot of Tory MPs who are pretty much in the doldrums at the moment. And this is where Nigel's right. You need to be able to concentrate on things like the Lib Dems. And I don't think either candidate has really tackled the reason the party lost the election so badly. And I think you need to face up to that. We lost quite badly. We lost an awful lot of good people. What are we going to do about it? Not just bang on about the same things that you've heard during the last set of leadership elections, which is always the ECHR, which is always immigration. There are other issues that matter.
Yeah, but
I think that you have to be able to address them.
Is that a fair point, or are both the contenders actually going on the idea that those are very strong issues with people who left the party to go to Reform?
Yeah, there's strong issues now, but we don't know what the situation's going to be in 5 years as far as immigration goes. When it comes to the whole ECHR thing, I mean, the one thing that they both talked about last night is how near it is to leaving the EU. It's a huge kind of thing to do. They didn't talk about, for instance, the effect on the Northern Ireland peace process. I've just done a piece for gbnews.com on that very issue, that you'd have to try and leave Northern Ireland in the ECHR if the rest of the UK left it. But under the rules of the ECHR, you can't pick and choose which bits of your country are covered by it and which aren't. So those are all the issues that if they want to go bang on about ECHR to deal with those issues, but it's a today issue, not necessarily an issue in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the party does need to repair, and it may take some time. I think we're all looking for somebody that's going to fix it immediately, and I'm not sure that's actually possible. The party needs to understand what it wants to be before anything else. What is it that you stand for as a Conservative? And then you start to build up from that. And I think you're right. If you lead, people will follow.
But what about this? Robert Jenrick was talking about this latest NPR poll, which said if he was leader of the party, those elections tomorrow, there'd be a hung parliament. If Kemi Badenoch was leader, Starmer would have a big majority still.
Yeah, it was quite interesting. It was quite an interesting poll to look at, and I think that there is that distinct possibility. I mean, who is going to bring the fight to the Labour Party? I think both of them have the capacity to be able to do it. It's which one can get the message across with the backing of the rest of the Conservative
Party. But that poll is now, isn't
massive.
it? The point is that poll is taken now, and that will be the situation at this moment. Again, in years' time, can be completely different.
I know, but you have to look at the information that's in front of you at the moment. That's all you can do.
You two, we're out of time, I'm afraid. Claire and Nigel, thank you very much. Let's have a look at the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest to Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea. And that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland and the far north. The rain moves through fairly quickly across western parts of the UK, but it will be heavy for a few hours into the evening and the first part of the night. Eventually it clears western Scotland and Northern Ireland with showers and clear spells following here, whilst it turns up across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England by dawn on Saturday. So with the cloud and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Saturday with 13 or 14 Celsius by dawn. Fresher in the far northwest, some sunshine, albeit with a few showers following in, and a less windy day all in all. But the rain's slow moving across the Midlands and eastern England on Saturday itself, a damp day to come in many places. Brighter skies do follow into the west, albeit with a few showers. And that's all ahead of the next area of low pressure, which is likely to arrive on Saturday night and into Sunday as a deep low, bringing potentially disruptive winds.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in North Yorkshire. Chilligate in York is closed off the A19 at the Bootham Bar traffic lights because of an accident. There are long delays towards there. And as you divert, on the M1 in South Yorkshire, there's a lane closed northbound for emergency repairs between junctions 37 and 38 from Barnsley to Huddersfield, and it's slow as a result. Now, there are a number of road closures because of flooding in Powys. The A490 is closed each way off the A483. At Coed Dinas in Worcestershire, the A443 is closed between Eddiston and Newnham. The A403 closed between Bransford and Rushwick, and in Herefordshire the A438 is closed each way between Willersley and Mansell Gamage. In Northamptonshire, Geddington Road in Corby is closed because of a fire. In London, the A210 Eltham Road is closed after an accident, and the M27 in Hampshire is partly blocked eastbound by a breakdown between junctions 3 and 4 from Southampton to the M3 causing queues.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
There's only luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good morning to you. The Tory leadership hopefuls clash in a GB News special.
Yes, Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick can't find common ground on the controversial topic of leaving the European Convention of Human Rights.
Mr Jenrick calling the treaty's ruling shameful before Mrs Badenoch bit back.
There's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
I think that the ECHR argument is not the right one. I think that is the biggest weakness. I think it will divide our party. It will mean that the infighting and squabbling will continue. If we want to end the drama, we need to do this the right way. Let's come to a consensus.
Do you want to remain within the ECHR and continue to have foreign criminals on our streets, terrorists who we can't remove, and borders which are not secure? Or do you want to leave and end this farce once and for all?
Australia prepares to greet the King and Queen as they arrive later this morning for that much-anticipated tour.
A day on from the death of Liam Payne, One Direction released a heartfelt statement. Simon Cowell takes a step back from the limelight.
World leaders hope an end is finally in sight to the Middle East war as Israel confirms it killed the architect of October the 7th. We're asking this morning, could the Middle East come back from the brink?
The Foreign Secretary lands in China to talk strategy. But is Keir Starmer's reset of world relations all it's cracked up to be?
ITV is ridiculed after an episode of Midsummer Murders includes a trigger warning for witchcraft. This morning, we debated whether content warnings are really always necessary.
A calm and misty start to Friday for many of us before it turns increasingly wet and windy from the west. A number of low-pressure systems to watch out for during the next few days. I'll have the full details in the forecast coming up soon.
Just gone 9 o'clock, I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast. Down.
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 Where you go?
Down.
Oh,
There.
Jez Bear.
Thank you. Jez Bear's been in touch this morning saying, so Kemi says, I only do the media when I have something to say. Do you not have anything to say? Being a Tory with nothing to say is not good. At least Jenrick is a man with a plan to solve immigration, says Jez Bear.
Well, keep your thoughts coming through on that one. I was just looking at the clip as we were playing it out about that Midsummer Murders story, which is driving you all crackers. Me too. But when John Nettles was in it, you see, it was good then.
Is that Barnaby?
Yes. You see, John Nettles is a man I would really like to meet.
Well, let's get him on the programme.
I'd love to meet John Nettles. It's a great actor. Bergerac is my era. Just brilliant.
I think we should put a bid in.
I'd love to. What would you talk to him about? Just come on the show and have a chit-chat.
Just a chit-chat. We'll do a Friday. We'll have a cup of tea with him.
Absolutely iconic.
We can ask him about content warnings.
Could do. I just think he was great. If you're a John Nettles fan, let's start a fan club. If there isn't one already. Just this brilliant actor. Terrific man. Love him. Anyway, just throwing that out there for you. Conservative leadership candidates Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch battled it out last night at a special GB News event.
Yes, they clashed on a wide range of issues, including Britain's membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, illegal migration and culture wars.
Well, Kemi Badenoch took aim at Robert Jenrick's media appearances.
I don't just go on media just for the sake of going on media. I go on media when I have something to say. That is how we run things. I don't believe anyone thinks that I am scared of scrutiny. I had it every day as a Member of Parliament and as a Minister.
Well, GB News' political editor Christopher Hope reflects on both of the candidates' performances.
Kemi Badenoch, will you call, please?
Heads.
Heads. Tails it is, Kemi Badenoch. Do you want to go first or second, Robert?
I'll go first, Chris.
And with that, the race to lead kicked off on GB News. Robert Jenrick would face questions from the Conservative members first, followed by Kemi Badenoch. And it's straight for Robert Jenrick on how to bring back the Reform voters.
That we tackled the biggest issues facing this country. And I think that does begin with migration. Because if we don't regain the public's trust on that issue, if we don't get back the millions of voters that we've lost to reform, we're just never going to be in government again.
It got spicy when talking about free speech.
The police have to enforce our existing laws without fear or favour. They must never allow a worry about community relations to stop fighting extremism.
Robert Jenrick's comments kept coming back to immigration and the ECHR.
So there's a clear choice here. It's leave or remain. And I'm for leave.
Christopher Chope has said today that Kemi Badenoch is preoccupied with her children. He says it's impossible to be a leader and a parent. Can a mum or a dad be that person and a leader?
Well, I hope so. I've got 3 kids myself. So I think he was wrong. He was definitely wrong.
The issue of slavery reparations is coming up. There's a meeting of the Commonwealth leaders next week. Should we pay slavery reparations for our imperial past?
No, absolutely not.
Then it was the turn of Kemi Badenoch. I asked if her pitch was based on principles but not policies, and if this was a problem.
I am not here to impose just what's in my head on everyone in the party. That is not what it needs. That is not how we unite the party. I know so many of you are tired and sick of the infighting and the squabbling. It happens when we don't get a consensus before we start proposing things to the public.
So where does she stand on ECHR withdrawal?
If we need to leave the ECHR in order to control migration, we should leave it. But it is not a silver bullet. It's not even the most radical thing that we can do.
Kemi Badenoch was asked by one of the members of the audience if it was time to end the culture wars.
It depends on who started these so-called culture wars.
They say you may have started it.
No, I don't think so. A lot of these things were happening long before Conservatives started speaking about them. I am worried about the way people talk about the history of this country.
But what does she think about being accused by a Tory MP that she can't be a mother of 3 and a leader?
Of course you can. I love my children. I have the most beautiful children in the world. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. I said to all of you that family was one of my key principles. I was able to be a great business secretary and trade secretary and equalities minister, effectively doing 3 jobs while balancing my home life. If I can do that, I can do this too.
And we did get some policies out of Kemi Badenoch in the end.
Labour's putting VAT on private school bills from January. Would you reverse it if you become Prime Minister?
OK, so...
It's a policy.
I know it is a policy. So I feel bad because I have to slightly change what I said. That is the very first thing that I will do if I become Prime Minister.
But crucially, what did the members think?
I think it was a tie, actually. But for me, I think Jenrick just about.
Yeah, I think Kemi, I think she's absolutely great.
But at the end of the day, I have a feeling neither of them will become Prime Minister.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is, neither of them are going to appeal to the electorate. We lost more votes to Labour than we did to Reform.
Christopher Hope, GB News, Westminster.
Well, earlier this morning, we spoke to Robert Jenrick to get his reaction to what happened last night.
I am not just auditioning to be the leader of the opposition. I want to be the next Prime Minister of this country. I think that I should put myself on your programme. I should be held accountable. I think what we saw last night was a great debate, but I want to see head-to-head debates. Why wouldn't we do that? You know, Kemi and I should be properly scrutinised for this job. Otherwise, we're letting down the membership of this party and ultimately the public.
Your key policy would seem to be the ECHR, because it's a block to the immigration problem, as you see it, that we have in this country. It was quite an interesting response from Kemi Badenoch last night when she said, well, actually, I think that's a weakness because I think we need to avoid this as an issue and until we've consolidated our view.
You know, 4 million of our voters went to Reform because they were so angry and frustrated at us on this very issue, securing our borders. And if we don't get them back, we will be in opposition for years to come. So the ultimate choice is opposition or government. I want to take us back into government.
Is that why you've suddenly swung to the right, as many would say, in order to get those voters who defected to Reform back over immigration? Because there are people who are suspicious of your lurch to the right, as they would see it. You were a Remainer, famously. You're a moderate Tory, as many would say, and there's reports in some of the papers that you quietly told your colleagues that if you were elected party leader, you would pivot the party back to the centre.
No, look, my values have never changed. My values are rooted in my upbringing. The town I grew up in, Wolverhampton, they are about the nation-state, their family, their small business, free enterprise, patriotism. Those are my values. But it's certainly true that my experience of the Home Office taught me that we will never secure our borders and keep the British people safe unless we do what I'm proposing, a cap on legal migration and leaving the ECHR. And there's a choice for the party's members. Do you want to speak in platitudes or do you want to have policies? Do you want to have a path to get back into government or do you want to remain in opposition? I know where I stand on those things.
That was Robert Jenrick earlier this morning. Loads of you getting in touch. Anthony says Kemi Badenoch only confirms the Conservatives are a busted flush if leaving the ECHR is wrong.
Catherine says, Kemi, if you want to spend as much time as possible with your kids, then you just shouldn't be Prime Minister.
Jean says Kemi Badenoch doesn't want to leave the ECHR and made a pig's ear out of tearing up EU laws. She had one job and failed.
Angela says Jenrick wanting to dress himself up as the answer to Nigel Farage. Why would we vote for him when we can just vote for the real thing in a general election?
And John says the debate last night was tame. I'm still voting Reform. Reform voters are not going back to the Tories.
I think that was intentional for it to be tame. I think you will have noticed, certainly was stark to me, no blue on blue attacks. I think they are trying as much as they can to keep a unified image.
Yeah.
Because the party is in disarray, isn't it? Let us know what you think on that, gbnews.com/yoursay. But should we go down under?
Oh, let's.
Because today marks the first time a reigning British monarch has visited Australia for 13 years.
King's very first time in the country since he ascended the throne. He's going to be welcomed by the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
Well, let's cross over all the way to Australia now, where our GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us live now from Sydney. Very good morning to you, Cameron, even though it's night time there, isn't it? Look at that. Absolutely incredible, Cameron. And the King and Queen are making their way over as we speak.
Yes, they absolutely are, Ellie. It's about 7:15 in the evening here in Sydney. And in the last hour, the King and Queen have released a statement. And they say, ahead of our first visit to Australia as King and Queen, we are really looking forward to returning to this beautiful country to celebrate the extraordinarily rich cultures and communities that make it so special. See you there. Well, the King and Queen will be arriving later on this morning. They have many engagements packed into this 6-day tour, including meeting Indigenous communities. A community barbecue as well is on the cards, as well as meeting the great and good, perhaps, of Australia, as well as ordinary citizens who perhaps will be joining the crowds outside the Sydney Opera House, for example, and other locations around the country too. But it was a trip which perhaps wouldn't have happened if you look back 8 months or so, because of course the King was diagnosed with cancer earlier on this year, but he is determined It's a shorter trip and there have been some concessions made. Doctors have allowed him to pause his cancer treatments while he is out here in Australia. As I said, it's only 6 days or so that's happening, but he is also going to be having some rest days. So, for example, tomorrow, Saturday, the King is not expected to carry out any engagements, neither is the Queen, and that perhaps is going to disappoint some racing fans because a horse race, King Charles III Stakes, named after him, of course, is running at the Rundwick Racecourse in Sydney, and there was some speculation as to whether or not the King and Queen would attend. I'm told that's not happening. But other engagements have been added. For example, the King will be meeting 2 Australians of the Year, cancer experts, professors in melanoma, one of the country's most common kinds of cancer, skin cancer. So he's going to be talking about that. But I spent most of the day here in Sydney. I arrived very early this morning and has been speaking to a number of people about what their thoughts are about the King and Queen visiting this country. Here's a bit of trivia for you. King Charles will be the first ever reigning king, to step foot on Australia's soil, and it depends who you speak to as to whether they're happy about it or not. Republicans are saying it's the farewell tour of Oz. Monarchists are clearly super excited, but here's what the people on the street actually think.
So excited about it.
Are you?
Yes. We actually saw him when we were in, where was that?
Oh, in Windsor.
In Windsor. Not really interested.
You're not really interested in the King coming?
No. I believe Australia should become a republic.
Australians are going to welcome Charles and Camilla down under?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, we're friendly people.
Sort of happy to see them. I'm glad they're coming out. It's good that they're showing some support for the country. It's kind of cool. Something to read about in the news, I guess.
I think everybody's just doing their thing and we should let them. I think it's all good. We welcome pretty much everybody here.
Well, the Australian Monarchists League claim thousands of Australians will be welcoming the King and Queen when they arrive here a little bit later on this morning. And if you keep tuning in to GB News, this building behind me, the Sydney Opera House, this is expected to light up, project images the previous 15 official visits to this country celebrating the King's arrival. So, yeah, stay tuned to GB News for the very latest.
Just before I let you go, Cameron, I've got to ask on an absolutely personal level, what is it like to be stood there with the Sydney Opera House right behind you? I can't imagine what it must feel like.
Do you know, it's pretty surreal, Stephen, to be honest. Jet lag hasn't quite caught up with me yet. There's still time. But it's just the most iconic location. And I think we are going to see the King and Queen visit the Opera House at some points during this 6-day tour. But I think there's going to be a big crowd perhaps here later. If the rain holds off, it's just started now, waiting for it to light up. So, yeah, it's pretty surreal. Very excited to be here.
Oh, and it's such an exciting tour as well. Great to be a part of. Thanks, Cameron Walker. Have fun. It's going to be amazing later, isn't it, when it all lights up?
I just can't imagine what it's like, because I've never been to Australia. I would love to go, but to literally be on the other side of the planet.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's a long way for the King to go as well after a cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
Just logistically, it's a lot, isn't it?
Yes, but I think it makes a difference if you're in a posh seat.
Yes.
Where you can where it turns into a bed and all that.
Well,
sort
he
of thing.
flew commercial half the way, so good on him.
Right. If you want to go to Australia...
You're going to need some cash.
You are going to need some cash. It ain't a cheap thing to do.
And we might be able to help you with that.
We could. You could win £36,000 tax-free in the Great British Giveaway. Here's how.
We love making our audience luck.
Good luck indeed. Still to come, find out what's coming up in Britain's newsroom this morning with Nana and Ben. That's next.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yep, and next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen. How do you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have checked you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Bourne, thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts, so forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world, just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there. People who've really fought for justice for their children. People who are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Now, coming up at 9:30, Britain's Newsroom with Ben Leo and Nana Requeer, who are here to tell us all about it. Morning, you two.
Good morning.
What have you got coming up?
Well,
I was about to say Brazilian bum lifts, but that's our show tomorrow.
That's our show tomorrow. You're getting ahead of yourself.
Something to look forward to.
What are we doing?
Well, we're going to talk about, obviously, the head-to-head debate between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch. A lot of people think that Kemi won it. Yeah, I think maybe, but then which one of them would you think is the right kind of candidate for to lead the party? So we'll have a body language expert, body...
I'll tell you what was interesting, because there was a show of hands last night. Someone messaged in, I can't find where it is now, but they said, well, of course the audience would support her because she was the last one to speak. And there is an element of that in all these things, that you do tend to go, whoever you last hear...
But he chose to go.
He did choose to go first. I don't know.
So I think you've got to go first. If you get a choice, you have to be seen to be keen and seen to go first. I was saying that to you in the break.
Interesting piece from Tim Stanley in the Telegraph this morning, who said Jenrick was right to go first because by 10 o'clock, all the older Tory voters would have either gone to bed or switched over to Vera. I'm not sure what Vera is. Is it a drama?
Vera, it's good, it's Vera. Might need a trigger warning because there are dead people in it.
I think they did.
Have you heard about that?
Oh, don't.
Yes. It was on ITV.
Yeah, that was for a 20-year-old episode of Midsummer Murders.
Including Witchcraft.
What was the reason? Because there was no black people in it?
There was witchcraft in it, Nana.
In that village, there was nobody of colour.
Oh, well, funny that.
There wasn't, never.
Elsewhere, there's a cricket ban on trans women playing in female cricket on the professional level, and also this sad news about the death of the baby crossing the channel overnight.
Well, the baby didn't cross the channel, did it? I mean, its parents put the baby on the dinghy. I'm almost tempted to prosecute the people who put a child in that position. How irresponsible.
And there was a case a couple of weeks ago now, a 2-year-old little boy was trampled to death on a small boat.
Right,
so it's happening frequently.
Playing devil's advocate, they would argue that they are fleeing war and persecution. And
from France?
And that's why they had
to
put the baby in the...
From France?
Yeah.
Well, it's an argument. When people would say it's the sign of the desperation that people are prepared to risk everything and huge amounts of money to cross over. I mean, that's the argument, isn't it?
That is the argument, but at the end of the day, you also have a responsibility to your children, and you have to think about the risks if you're going to put them under that risk. Should something happen to them? I mean, if that happened in this country, you put a child in that danger, you could be done for manslaughter, I'd have thought.
Elsewhere, you've already played it on your show this morning. I think in the last hour, this amazing drone footage from the IDF of Israel killing Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. Apparently, you've not played it, but we've got the footage in our show. It's extraordinary, not to be missed. It's a drone that flies into this sort of rubbled building where Sinwar is hiding. And in his last act of defiance, some may call it. He throws a stick at the drone before a tank or sniper blows him to pieces. So.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, heck, dear me. It's all bigger. There are some grim pictures in the papers, actually, of all of that this morning.
Yeah.
They sort of do need a trigger warning, but that's a whole different issue. Thank you both. See you a little bit later on.
Thank you very much.
That's it from us. Here's the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Some poor visibility this morning, a foggy start for many. It then turns wet and windy from the west. Always windiest in the far northwest, where it's already turning wet and increasingly breezy through the morning. Those winds peaking at 50 to 60 miles an hour for the northwest of Scotland, accompanied by high tides, could cause some impacts. Turning cloudy across the rest of Scotland, Western England and Wales, with outbreaks of rain moving in. But once the fog clears across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, some decent sunshine and feeling pleasant, even as the breeze picks up later in the day. 16 or 17 Celsius in the southeast, 13 to 15 further north and west. And it is a cloudy, damp end to the afternoon across Wales and the southwest of England. The rain not that heavy at this point, but it is going to be increasingly windy through the Irish Sea. And that wind will affect Northern Ireland with some heavy rain at times. Western Scotland also seeing the heaviest rain during the afternoon and evening, whilst by this time the rain is approaching eastern Scotland